Right, a big welcome to the first council meeting in our civic campus. It is a great honour to host this meeting tonight in this beautiful chamber. I am Councillor Sharon Holder, Mayor of the London Borough of Hammersmith and Fulham, and I will be chairing tonight's meeting. I'd like to be addressed as Madam Mayor. The meeting is being live streamed to YouTube, and by participating, you are consenting to being recorded. To make the meeting accessible, there will be live options for people to follow. I welcome our guests in the audience to this meeting and those watching on YouTube. To ensure that the meeting runs smoothly, please, no heckling is allowed. Councillors, if the whip has not provided me with your name and you wish to speak, please raise your hand and wait until I call you. If you wish to raise a point under standing orders, please raise your hand and I will invite you to speak at a suitable point. When called to speak, please state the standing order you wish to use. If you wish to raise a point of order or personal explanation, you may interrupt the councillor speaking. However, please ensure your points are factual and brief. I would also like to remind members that it is customary to stand when speaking, if you are able to, so you can be clearly seen and heard. If you are watching at home and would like to follow along with the agenda, there is a link in the description on YouTube. Fire alarm instructions. We are not expecting a fire alarm tonight, but if it does sound, officers will advise you to evacuate and direct you to the escape route down the stairs on either side of the building. If you cannot use the stairs, then please remain where you are and officers will arrange for your safe evacuation. Toilets are available on the side you entered the building at both levels. Apologies for absence.
Thank you, Mayor. Apologies for absence have been received from councillors Sally Taylor, Alex Anderson, Andrew Jones, Anne Rosenberg, Ross Melton, Nicole Treehey, Nikos Souslis, Helen Rowbottom, Omid Murray, Patrick Walsh and David Morton.
Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? Item number 3, which is the minutes. Are the minutes of the meeting held on the 28th of January 2026 agreed? Item 4. I invite the leader to speak on the 4th year anniversary of the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I speak, sadly, for the 4th occasion in 4 years following Vladimir Putin's evil attack on the independent democracy that is the Ukraine. All of us in this chamber, I know, will agree when we salute the Ukrainians for their bravery and remind ourselves that it is not just the Ukrainians fighting for their democracy, but fighting for ours and every other Western European democracy. I am forever grateful to the many, many hundreds of residents who opened their doors and took in Ukrainian refugees. Many of those refugees are still here. They live amongst us. They've made their home here. And we are lucky to have them, as we are many refugees who make this borough their home. The 21st century has started extremely badly in terms of the values that we have always cherished for all of our time in this amazing society of ours. All of those values will be continually challenged in the 21st century. So for us in this council chamber to reaffirm our belief in the rule of law, in free and fair elections, in the rights of, in human rights, and in the very values that define us as British and as democratic and as people who, no matter who you are, you do not have to bend your knee to anybody because we live in an equal society. That's what the Ukraine war is about. It is important for as long as this war persists that every year we stand up and reaffirm that we stand with our Ukrainian sisters and brothers.
I've been informed that Councillor Jose Alfonso would like also to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. 4 years ago yesterday, the people of Ukraine woke to the sound of Russian missiles striking their cities, their homes, their hospitals, and their schools. What followed was not merely an act of aggression against a sovereign nation, it was an assault upon the very principles of freedom and democracy which we hold so dear. 4 years on, the courage of the Ukrainian people has been nothing short of extraordinary. Against overwhelming odds, they have defended their homeland with a bravery and determination that has inspired the entire free world. From the soldiers on the front lines to the mothers sheltering their children in the basement shelters, from the doctors treating the wounded to the farmers harvesting crops under fire, the spirit of Ukraine remains unbroken. Let us be clear-eyed about the stakes. What happens in Ukraine does not stay in Ukraine. If aggression is rewarded, if borders can be redrawn by force, then no nation is safe. We must also ensure that those responsible for the atrocities committed in Bucha, in Mariupol, in Irpin, and in the countless communities across Ukraine are held to account. And to the people of Ukraine, we say this: you are not alone. Your fight is our fight. Your freedom is our freedom. And to those in our own country who buy into the Russian propaganda, who would want President Zelensky to do a deal at all costs, I say this: a bad peace is merely a temporary pause between now and the next war of Russian aggression. The freedoms Ukrainians fight for today is the freedom our country fought for between 1939 and 1945. The freedom to choose their nation's destiny. The freedom to not bow to the whims of dictators. The freedom to live, to grow, and to prosper on their own terms. Madam Mayor, our borough has a proud history in the fight for freedom. It was down the road at St. Paul's that Eisenhower briefed Churchill and the British High Command on Operation Overlord. The beginning of the liberation of Europe from Nazi tyranny started here. So I gladly join the leader of the council this evening in condemning Russia, in wholehearted support of our friends in Ukraine, and with the hope that a lasting peace can be agreed with Ukraine's sovereign territory intact. Slava Ukraini.
Item number 5, public questions. I'd like to thank everyone who took the time to submit questions to tonight's meeting. Public question time is limited to 20 minutes. If a question does not receive a reply in the meeting, a written response will be sent and published in the minutes. I have provided a copy of your questions, written questions, which members have had sight of. Please read out the question and submit, and that you've submitted. You will have an opportunity to ask a brief related follow-up question. I invite Brian Mooney to ask a question to Councillor Chevot-Verdier, Cabinet Member for Public Realm. Please, can you read your question?
Right. Good evening, Madam Mayor, fellow residents, and especially Councillor Chevot-Verdier. My question: does the current administration commit now, and if re-elected, not to introduce any form of road pricing for or generic bans on driving typical family vehicles? Please regard the special case of possible Hammersmith Bridge tolls as outside the scope of the question.
Okay. Okay, I invite Cabinet Member to provide a response.
Thank you, Mayor. Hi, Brian. It's good to see you last Saturday. No, we have no plans to introduce, weird to turn my back on everyone. We don't have any plans to introduce any form of road pricing as we discussed at the last full council.
Your answer does not give a commitment not to introduce it. You just say you don't have any plans to. Will you commit to not introduce it? That was the question.
So as we discussed last time, the air quality plan is committing
Yeah.
us for the next 5 years. So yes, we are not committing to introduce any form of road pricing.
But you are
Thank you
committed
very
not-
much. You had a
Thank you.
follow-up question. Thank you. Moving on. Question number 2. I invite Natalie Turner to ask a question to Councillor Chavot-Verdier, Cabinet Member for Public Realm. Please, can you read your question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, all. As you discussed the budget this evening, my question is what funding in this budget is dedicated to improving the public realm or visual appearance of Uxbridge Road, and how will this be delivered in a coordinated way?
I invite the Cabinet Member to provide a response.
Thank you, Mr. I'll reply as the lead member for Uxbridge Road. Thank you for your question and the time that you've been putting into making Uxbridge Road as safe, welcome and accessible as possible. We genuinely very much appreciate it, and congratulations for the civic award that you and your colleagues received the other night. You raise a critical point regarding funding, and the council is already spending significant resources from annual budgets on heightened LET patrols, increased enforcement, decluttering, and the development of new standards. This is drawing on the budgets of dozens of teams from across the council. However, large amounts of capital funding will be required to make fundamental improvements to the streetscape, in particular to make the road more accessible and pleasant for pedestrians and cyclists, improving the accessibility and appearance of Shepherd's Bush Market Tube, and to improve shop fronts in line with the recommendations from the Jan Catan architect consultants. We are determined to secure these resources and are working at pace to do so. As is the case with street improvements across London, this will require multiple funding streams, all of which we are pursuing actively. These include the council's own resources to co-design designs of improvements. This was done with the shopfront designs from Jan Catan, and we will pursue this with designing a more accessible street for pedestrians and cyclists. We are bidding for TfL funding for highway and tube improvements. The government announced a national high streets renewal fund last month, which will soon invite bids. The fund aims to revitalise high streets, including through improving neglected shop fronts. We will submit an ambitious bid for the high street and seek endorsement from local MPs. Where developments are taking place in the vicinity of the Uxbridge Road, private developments, we will ensure Section 106 and other development funding supports improvements to the high street. And finally, we'll work with local businesses to form a Shepherd's Bush Business Improvement District, which would include raising funds for local improvements, and that will also help make the case to outside funding bodies for required improvements. So we're attacking this at all angles and determined to get the funding needed to achieve the shared vision for the road.
Thank you. Natalie, do you have a follow-up question?
Yes, briefly. I mean, firstly, thank you for all of that. It's really great to hear all of the work and the creativity and drawing from different funds, etc. I'm particularly excited about the High Street Renewal Fund. I just wondered if any of what you've just listed there you can commit to delivery within a sort of short-term period, for example, the next 6 months.
So a lot of the stuff, a lot of the annual money that we're spending is happening as we speak. In the next 6 months, I think we need to try and get the designs together so that we can then bid for that much bigger funding, which will be longer than 6 months, but that will see the sort of ambitious cycle lanes and other improvements to the road that will make it a much more pleasant experience for everyone who uses it.
Thank you. Moving on to question number 3, I invite Donald Grant to ask a question to Councillor Chavot-Verdier, Cabinet Member for Public Realm. Please, can you read your question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, councillors. Nice to be back in this wonderful chamber. So whilst Albert Bridge is closed, more traffic uses Wandsworth Bridge Road than even before. And the LTNs on either side currently force all through traffic to use Wandsworth Bridge Road. So will the council now consider reopening or consider the health and the lives of residents, businesses and users on Wandsworth Bridge Road and reopen Imperial and Hurlingham roads to through traffic whilst Albert Bridge is being repaired because it's closed?
I invite the Cabinet Member for Public Realm to provide a response.
Well, thank you for your question. The cleaner neighbourhood in South Fulham exists particularly to protect residents from this type of occurrence. It's designed to protect residential streets from arrival of extra traffic caused by the Albert Bridge. On the consequences, the causes of the Albert Bridge, I'll let everyone in the chamber draw their own conclusion. What we're seeing is traffic is going to the Battersea Bridge. I checked the dashboard last night, checking us about performance on the Wandsbridge Road. It's about 6 seconds faster to cross it, so north-south, so in south-north. So we're not seeing an increase in traffic on the Wandsbridge Road, but that exists particularly to protect residents' roads from that type of event. I'm glad that we've put it in, and I'm not going to dismantle it.
Mr. Grant.
Thank you. I think what the stats don't tell you is you can't get any more traffic on Wandsworth Bridge. That's maybe why it's 6 seconds faster to get up it. 6 seconds out of a 20-minute journey is nothing. And there are 906 residents on the Townmead Imperial Road side, for example, 65 Victorian houses, compared with double that, 173 Victorian houses in Wandsworth Bridge Road and 1,375 residents. That's your own figures. It's a narrower road, even narrower now. These death traps have been put in the cycle lanes. Why are the residents on Wandsworth Bridge Road less important than those on Imperial and Townmead roads?
Invite the Cabinet Member to respond.
Thank you, Mayor. I've been on the Wandsworth Bridge Road, and I've spoken to mothers who have said to me that their child almost died because of reckless driving. I've met elderly people who have told me that they're afraid to cross the road just to go get groceries. The programme that we've put in place to change the Wandsworth Bridge Road, improve it, highlights particularly that it's important to us. You might think that if it weren't, then we wouldn't have this programme. So I don't agree with the premise of your question, and I think it's very important for us to support local residents. I'm proud and glad of what we're doing, and I'll continue to do it.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That's very disappointing, but we'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Question number 4. I invite Caroline Shuffrey to ask a question to the Councillor Chevalier, Cabinet Member for Public Realm. Please,
Good evening.
Read your question?
Good evening, Madam Mayor. Good evening, everybody. My question is about my petition, which is actually addressed to Stephen Cowan. So, Florin, I think perhaps you could forgive me if I just ask the question directly to Stephen Cowan, even though you probably will be answering it. Mr. Cowan, the petition Stop Hammersmith and Fulham Council Clogging Up South West London and Wandsworth Bridge Road has been signed by more than 5,100 people. 75% of those signing live in London. 52% of those signing live in our borough and Wandsworth Borough. Does the council accept that it is negatively impacting the lives of thousands of people in the area, the majority of whom do not own a car or van and therefore modify its traffic plans?
Ms. Shuffrey, can I just please ask you to accept that this question is to Councillor Chevalier and no one else? Thank you. So, Cabinet Member, like to respond?
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's important to remind ourselves of the numbers. I'm sorry, I don't like to read from a sheet, but I'll do on this occasion. There were 45,000 vehicles in 2018. There were 35,000 vehicles in 2022 and just under 34,000 vehicles in 2024. So numbers are not going up. We're not clogging Southwest London. We're removing pollution, congestion and danger from our streets. I don't agree with the suggestion that we're negatively impacting people's lives. I think when I hear our Director of Public Health saying that there are 87 people in our borough who die from polluted air, I mean, I wonder who's here to volunteer 87 people. Our mothers, our sisters, our neighbours. I'm not going to rest until I make sure that I've done everything that I can to protect local residents. Now, on to TFT, Department for Transport numbers. You know that their measurements are showing the traffic is down. We've just talked in the previous question about the impact of the Albert Bridge closure. We're not seeing an increase in traffic. So I don't agree with the premise of your question that our works on Wandsworth Bridge Road and everything in South Fulham negatively impacts people's lives.
Thank you. Ms. Shuffrey, do you have a follow-up question?
Yes, I have a follow-up question. Residents were not coerced into signing the petition. We did not knock on people's doors or issue leaflets or rely on political endorsement. In fact, the only political endorsement that we received came from Fleur Anderson, Labour MP for Putney. Will the council hold a public meeting to consult with its concerned residents rather than just discussing traffic schemes with a few residents? These schemes are impacting the lives of thousands of people by discussing only with a few residents, one of whom is now about to stand as a local councillor in the next election for Labour. Could we please really talk to residents about what they think, rather than just referring to a mother in a pushchair? If you held a public meeting... Sorry.
Yes, I invite the cabinet member to respond.
I will continue to refer to mothers in pushchairs because that's the reality of what we have on the Wasbridge Road, and that's why we're acting, is to protect our residents. So I don't know where that comes from. I think on the public element, well, we're about to have the biggest public meeting and consultation event for local elections in less than a month and a half. Equally, to your claim that we would be in a world in a vacuum where we don't listen to people, when we started the works that concern the raised crossings to increase accessibility and security for our disabled residents, we took on board residents' comments, particularly regarding extra bays on e-bikes and e-cycles. So if we were in a vacuum, we wouldn't have made any of the changes compared to the original plans we'd progressed. And you're right, there will be a consultation exercise. It's the local elections. You get to choose, and you and the other residents get to choose the direction of travel of the council for the next 4 years.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to question 5, I invite Richard Cazenove to ask a question to Councillor Chavot Verdier, Cabinet Member for Public Realm. Please, can you read your question?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'd be grateful for an update on when the exemption from non-council Hurlingham Club traffic from the Hurlingham Road CAN camera is going to be implemented. The Madam Mayor, in her formal role, promised it by the summer of 2024 at the March 2024 full council meeting. And when this was delayed, the current Cabinet Member for Public Realm reported at the full council meeting in July 2025 that the system would be operational at the end of 2025. 7 weeks into the new year, no exemption has been implemented and there has been no update from the council. Action has been taken on other roads, notably Cancarty and Septrington, to mitigate sat-nav's systems from guiding traffic down previously quiet streets to avoid CAN cameras. Nearly 3.5 years since identical concerns, and I repeat the word identical, were raised in our neck of the woods and specifically on the street where we live, it's increasingly difficult to understand why we're still waiting for action.
I invite the Cabinet Member to provide a response.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Richard. I think interesting question. We're talking here about implementing a scheme that protects residents' roads from through traffic from out of borough persons. You're right. We'd said that it would be working and we've hit a bit of a technical problem. The tech is harder to procure and get around. My director assures me they'll be live in April. So hopefully good. You're right, the Clancarty system has been a great success. Lots of the local residents are really happy, and that's an interesting thing to raise here after the 2 previous questions. I also know that the Hurlingham is working on a new exit system, so the out traffic will be more balanced, hopefully reduce the impact on your neighbourhood. But yes, you're right, we're absolutely committed to delivering it.
That's great. All I would say about the technology is that you currently use the technology to provide exemption to traffic returning over Wandsworth Bridge if it's out of borough when the back gate at Hurlingham is closed. That's the first point. And the second point is you provided a temporary exemption to Hurlingham Club traffic, again, out of borough Hurlingham Club traffic from the Hurlingham Road camera 2 weeks ago, whilst roadworks are taking place on Hurlingham Road. So my takeaway would be that the technology is there. I just hope that you fulfill the commitment to introduce it in April. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Does the Cabinet Member want to say anything? Are you happy with that? Thank you. Okay. Right. So that is now the end of public questions. Thank you. Moving now on to item number 6, committee reports. Item 6.1, revenue budget and council tax levels for 2026-27. I call on the leader to move the report and recommendations.
Formally moved.
Sorry. The agreed convention is that the leader of the council and the leader of the opposition have unlimited time to speak on this report, and up to 3 other speakers from each side can speak for 5 minutes each. The leader will then sum up. I call on the leader of the council, Councillor Stephen Cowan, to speak.
Thanks very much. It is indeed good to be back in this council chamber. This place that has seen so much discourse, disagreement, debate, all stretching back, way back to 1939. It's a place where ideas that have changed our world have been set out and voted on. It's the centre of our local democracy. It's a historic place, and we're back. For many of us in this chamber, we can't be here without remembering those whom we served alongside previously. Mike Cartwright, Francis Stainton, Colin Ahern, Gerald Wormel. All of us should feel a sense of gratitude for their service. I am sorry they cannot be here to see what we've done with the building. And given the troubled times we've just discussed in the first speeches, we're reminded to be grateful for our British democratic system that sends all of us here to serve. For us, on this side of the aisle, that service became significantly more meaningful when we became the administration in 2014. I remember the annual general meeting here on the 16th of June 2014. You can still see it on YouTube. And those first budget meetings, all of us who were here back then, and I've seen many, will remember how one former Conservative councillor, a former leader, was still upset from the defeat that the Conservatives suffered, and explained to us in detail how it would be impossible for our new Labour administration to meet the budget gap that we had inherited. He said there would be very tough measures needed along the lines that he had already been implementing as part of that administration. To be fair, back then, and if we apply CPI, the real terms 4-year budget gap in 2014-15 was £94.9 million. Actually, if we use RPI, it was £102.7 million. That former Conservative administration had famously relied on a 5-pronged strategy, and everyone will remember what that was. It was to, first of all, change the nature of the borough's housing so it was not affordable for people who might need to use council services. Now, that sounds fanciful. I can see a look of shock on one of the faces. Then it was literally what was said in the select committee meetings by Conservative cabinet members when they described their strategy. It's not something we're making up. It's on record. It was said by Conservatives in those select committee meetings. And once they could do that, would allow them to deliver severe cuts to services, because obviously with less people in need, there is less need for services. The next part of their strategy was to introduce new and huge rises in council charges. Now, that always caused some debate, but the record shows that Meals and Wheels went up some 700% in cost. Home care, having been promised to be free by the Conservative opposition, became £12.40 an hour. Parking went up by over 50% for successive years. There were significant increases in charges, and there were over 500 charges that saw such increases. And I think some of the most painful, and I often think some of the most ridiculously inept part, was item 4 of their strategy, which was vast land and asset sell-offs. Now, we stood in this chamber and we argued against them, and many of us will remember those arguments. But actually, selling off council estates, selling off community centres, and these rooms were full, selling off youth clubs, which I always think is a crime, given we need young people to feel that sense of nurture and ambition, selling off parks as they were doing in South Park, and selling off Fulham Town Hall for £8 million. These were all mistakes, but that was part of the strategy, consolidate the asset base. And finally was the dry borough, which we thought might be a great advancement at the time. We were very supportive of it in opposition, but we quickly realized it was a cumbersome, slow-thinking, dysfunctional organization prone to making costly mistakes. Whether it was the BT managed service mistake, the SEN transport mistake, they were costly and ridiculous, and the organization didn't work. So back then, the Conservatives had predicted that our new Labour administration would need to make massive hikes in Hammersmith and Fulham's council tax just to meet the gap. Now, I remember those predictions of doom caused a fair bit of light relief, presumably therapeutic relief for the newly Conservative opposition benches. So why the diagnosis of a £100 million budget gap was quite correct. The Conservatives' prescriptions was deeply flawed, as we have seen since. And we in Hammersmith and Fulham Labour took a very different approach. Smarter procurement, better negotiations, better contract and better contract management, service reconfiguration, reduced duplication across and within departments, prevention through early intervention, going upstream to fix problems at source, commercialisation, estate rationalisation. I'm pleased that every single member of staff will be able to fit into this new civic campus and not be scattered around in expensive rented accommodation across our borough. But estate rationalisation has been a key part of our approach. Pension revaluation, thank you, Ross, and I appreciate your leadership on that. Debt reduction, which meant we were paying less in interest rates than at any point in the past. New technology adoption, using that technology to reduce significant changes, and service review and continuous modernization. It's a program that still goes on today. We stripped out layers of management, engineered better partnership working, and used business intelligence mapping to prosecute smarter outcome-orientated spending. Now, this does sound fairly technical. It is technical, but for those people who don't follow it, I would simply say it's known as ruthless financial efficiency. For over a decade, ruthless financial efficiency has been a publicly stated cultural value of this local authority, this Labour authority. This year, the total sum of our ruthless financial efficiency programme is a staggering £156 million saving. It's a huge amount. 156 is a record cut in wasteful council spending. It's the largest amount ever saved. Our approach to this robust management of these finances, this council's finances, has been independently assessed. So it's easy for politicians to be saying these things, but in our system of democratic government, we are independently assessed. So last year, the cross-party peer review said this: Hammersmith and Fulham is ambitious and financially well run. It led the external auditor to state publicly that Hammersmith and Fulham is far better run than the majority of councils. And Hammersmith and Fulham was the first local authority in England, because of that confidence, to have its accounts signed off for the year. Genuinely reassuring for us, but also reassuring for our residents whose hard-fought incomes are going for council tax, but delivers services here that you simply would not get if you lived in many other places. But more than reassurance, though, this approach means that tonight, at this annual budget meeting, our Hammersmith and Fulham Labour administration proposes to set a Band D council rate at £1,009. To put that into context, adjusted for inflation, that Band D rate compares to a 2010 council tax that in today's money would be £1,350. Now let's remember, 2010 was when that dreadful, negligent Prime Minister, David Cameron, took charge and introduced his ridiculous austerity programme, his economically illiterate austerity programme. £1,350 versus £1,009. If we adjust for inflation again, the council tax we set tonight is lower than the 2014 Band D council tax of £1,067. So this year's council tax is in real terms over 5% lower than the budget we were bequeathed by Hammersmith and Fulham Conservatives. But we've never been here, this Labour administration has never been here just to set council tax. We're in government here in this borough to improve the lives and transform the life chances of all our residents. We're here to improve our environment, protect our treasured biodiversity, and tackle climate change. We're here to build the economy and make it work for everyone. We came into office to build a stronger, safer, and kinder Hammersmith and Fulham. In any job, in any appraisal, it's always the deeds, not words, that is the measure. From day one, our administration was focused on deeds. We ended the Conservative policy of selling off all council street properties to property speculators. Thank you, Lisa Homan, for your leadership on that. It happened on our first day in office. Also, Councillor Homan told the queue of property speculators lined up to buy all our council estates, and that was happening. And on the cheap, let's remember how much they were selling these things off for, that there was a new administration in town and we would no longer sell council estates. On day 4, we saved Sullivan Primary School from closure. And from the very beginning, we took a tough approach to negotiating with property developers, winning us a record £600 million for our residents. Money that would prove crucial for all of the other things we wanted to do. Just for the record, given where we are in this time, on this date, let's look at the other actions we did. We took all homeless children out of long-term B&B accommodation and found them proper homes. We stopped the programme of evicting people because they hadn't filled in forms and knocked on the doors of people who weren't filling in the forms and asked them to fill them in, help them to fill them in, not just kinder, but saving the council over £2 million in savings. We ended the Conservatives' ban on building genuinely affordable homes. We're now building record amounts. We increased voluntary sector funding with a new emphasis on homelessness and social inclusion. We cut Meals on Wheels charges. We stopped the Conservatives' parking heights, stopped using bailiffs and introduced an ethical debt policy, provided new funding for local food banks, made all of Hammersmith and Fulham streets 20 miles per hour safe zones, saved the Lyric Theatre from bankruptcy with a £5 million bailout, funded the Bush Theatre, funded the Hammersmith and Fulham Law Centre after the Conservatives actively tried to shut it down, and we found a new affordable office space too. We introduced the most electric car charging bays in Britain. We became the only council in the UK to send hundreds of social workers into camps to rescue hundreds of child refugees. We became the only council in the country to abolish charges for adult social care. We spent record amounts on crime fighting with new CCTV and police patrols. We gave our residents the 3rd lowest council tax in the country. We've been independently verified as the 2nd greenest council in the country. We have more climate tech investment than Birmingham, Bristol, Manchester combined, or one of only 10 councils still carrying out weekly bin collections. We saved the West Kensington and Gibbs Green estates, which the Conservatives had sold for the knockdown price on a £12 billion scheme of £100 million. They thought it was good value. And we saved Charing Cross Hospital, despite them saying it wasn't under threat, and then later trying to claim credit for having saved a hospital they said was never under threat. These are just some of the changes we sought to deliver. But the Conservatives didn't just bequeath us a £100 million black hole. They left other messes for us to clean up too. Take their town hall development, their original town hall development. Their plan was to gift the car park that now has houses on it opposite to their hand-picked developers who plan to build investment flats for overseas property speculators. That was make them £17 million for their scheme, which they said would use to do up this old dilapidated building, large parts of it which could not be used. When we arrived in administration, the scheme was underway and the old Tinner Road being demolished, and the developers they had picked quickly told us their numbers did not add up. There would be no profits, and not only would there no profits to do up this town hall, that the cost would spiral for a variety of reasons. The scheme we inherited is significantly more expensive than this scheme that we are in the process of just about completing. This building, the new civic campus, costs less than the Conservatives' original scheme. It makes an operating profit when it is up and running, with people queuing up to take leases now. It brings new affordable housing with 52% genuinely affordable. It brings new public facilities, from homework clubs to a public sky park, art galleries, concert halls, cafes, shops and restaurants. It will put the thriving hospitality and retail sector from Chiswick High Road, and it will pull it down into King Street and transform and rejuvenate Hammersmith. I am particularly grateful, and I am pleased that we will have their names engraved at the front of the building, to Richard Winterton, Alan Bird and Melanie Whitlock, who worked with us as residents as our civic campus commissioners. I don't believe we would have done this without their imagination and spirit, and I still rely on their advice today. This is a tribute to them as much as it is to everybody else involved. But the Conservatives did not just try and sell off Hammersmith and Fulham's council housing. In 2013, they saddled us with a deliberately underfunded 10-year repairs and maintenance contract that put our council housing into a dreadful state. We had to get the most expensive lawyers in the country to get us out of the contract. And when we got out the contract, we found damp and mold and rot, something that we had to clean up. Something worth fixing by making a £675 million investment, the biggest refurbishment of council housing that this borough has ever seen, and done because this is an administration that believes in social and council housing, and that people should have a decent home and an affordable place to live in a place like Hammersmith and Fulham. Throughout our time in office, these local Conservatives have been against every measure I listed. They've voted against it, they've argued against it, they sometimes tried to prevaricate, but they show their hands. And what do they offer now? Well, it's hard to tell, because they're very coy, aren't they? But they did say they'll build a new pontoon bridge in Hammersmith, next to Hammersmith Bridge, and they claim it will cost no more than £20 million. Now, this is insightful for two reasons. Firstly, it gives you an idea of how this lot does accounting, okay? Because I, sadly, know a fair bit about building bridges, but you don't need to accept my view that this is simply not true. It's fanciful, it's childish economics and weak accountancy. And putting aside the engineering challenges alone, there are many other things that make their scheme impossible. Don't take my word for it. Go back and see what the Conservative government's own task force did, who made similar ridiculous comments. I remember many of the transport ministers and the former MP for Chelsea and Fulham standing on the bridge, first claiming they could build a new one for £5 million. Then after some thought, they thought £5 million doesn't sound like a lot, does it? Maybe we'll say 7. And that became what they were going to build the new bridge for. And when we had the Conservative task force start and we went through all the details, they quickly realised in the Conservative government that that simply wasn't possible, and that the bridge cost was well over £250 million. Indeed, here's a good measure. The Conservative task force tried to build a pier from the bottom of Queen Caroline Street out into the middle of the Thames, where a small boat would cart people across, because it was only for pedestrians, and drop them off in barns. They spent £24 million on that, and it never ever happened because it was impossible for them to get done. This lot are playing the same game that the Conservatives have always played on Hammersmith Bridge, is to think you can mislead all of the people all of the time. Didn't work for them last time, it won't work for them this time, but it is insightful to how they do accounts. Now, not only are they playing to type on this, they are also talking about what they might do when they're in office. I saw a video pop up recently that said they would cut politically correct funding, and they cited how this administration had funded a voluntary group who took refugees kayaking. Now, I was quite proud of that when I heard we've been taking refugees kayaking. This lot, they're against it. The first cut on the first day in office. Okay, they say they'll remove measures to clean our air. They say they will cut the law enforcement team and scale back crime fighting measures. And they made it clear They will end our free breakfast school program for school children program if ever they had to be in a position of funding it. These Conservatives have never, ever apologised for the programme that they inherited from the previous administration. What they say is that was a long time ago. That didn't involve us, but it did. Many of these people were candidates then, and many of them joined the Conservative group knowing that was the programme, only to find themselves in opposition. And even when they hadn't been in opposition and they were new to it, they never once denounced the former programme. I tell you why they've done that, because they are hoping people will forget what they did last time so they can do it all again. Politics is about value systems. And a value system that doesn't see the human being, but doesn't see the nature of society, but only sees the cuts, the council tax, and misunderstands the numbers, is the type of value system that got us into the calamity that I just ran through. But enough of them. In Hammersmith and Fulham Labour, we've always strived to prove we're different, defying the odds to get things done. That is how we saved Charing Cross. Every single official told me that was impossible, but we found a legal route to doing it, and we did it, and we stopped it from demolition. It's how we reversed the Conservatives' plan to build all of the borough's housing estates, and more specifically, how we saved the West Kensington and Gibbs Green estates. That was not easy. We had to get some of the best lawyers in the country, and we had to come up with a very complicated strategy, but that scheme was a Ponzi scheme. Not that they worked it out, but it was a Ponzi scheme that everybody knew in the marketplace was undeliverable. And it collapsed. And it collapsed having taken in these people to sell the land at £100 million, and then a month later give planning permission and see the land transformed from just a few hundred million to 12.05 billion. This aspect of this Hammersmith and Fulham Labour group of doing things against the odds, it's the police's responsibility to fight crime, not ours, but we have stepped in to support them. We have the biggest crime-fighting measures ever taken in the history of this borough, and some of the most anywhere in the United Kingdom. But it's also why we set up an industrial strategy. Now, councils don't normally have industrial strategies, and certainly not inclusive ones, but we set ours up. It's made Hammersmith and Fulham a global hotspot in the fourth industrial revolution industries of the future. It's won us a record £6 billion of investment, which, to provide context, is more than all of the rest of West London combined. It's curated over 17,000 new jobs in tech, climate and life science sectors, and more spin-out startup businesses than anywhere else in the United Kingdom. It's how we built state-of-the-art youth and community facilities like the West Youth Zone in White City and the Sands End Arts and Community Centre in South Fulham, a community centre, by the way, we didn't even promise to replace after the Conservatives sold the last one off on the cheap. We said we would try and replace it, but we did, and it is now a centre of life in Sands End, and we're proud of it. And with record funding for young people, we're seeking to make our industrial strategy and to think about the life chances we're offering and to make those things a reality for people who normally don't get to plan the biggest adventure that life can offer. This vision of a borough that has brought that is transforming, that is in a global economic hotspot, that is working for everybody, it has coalesced other people around it. People are fundamentally decent. Companies, many of them, people in those companies are fundamentally decent, and they want us to help. They want to help us. That's allowed us to pioneer what my colleague Andrew Jones says is a new political philosophy, which we call entrepreneurial municipal government. Now, it does not involve squandering council money on shopping centres or buying wind farms or all the other things that we've seen people do. This is entrepreneurial, and no entrepreneur I know uses their own money. They have an idea and a vision, they coalesce and infuse people about that, and then they use their resources to make it happen. Now, it's that process of municipal entrepreneurialism that built us Scale Space. It was our idea, pitched to both Imperial and to Blenheim Chalcott, who told me they were moving out the borough. We put them together and suggested they build a startup space where businesses could scale. That's one of the reasons why we have so many startups. Didn't cost us a penny. but it fitted into the wider vision of what we're about. Shepherd's Bush Market now has laboratories and student accommodation. It will be not only a place where there's lots of genuinely affordable housing, but it will be a place where economic growth happens, surrounded by a beautiful market. The Magistrates Court now has student accommodation because we want people to be in a campus borough who are studying and working here, and we're building student accommodation, and a hotel because global economic hotspots need hotels. Hotels create jobs, they create disposable income, and that benefits our high streets. And the new stand at Fulham Football Club. When Fulham came to see me and said they wanted to build an 8-storey car park under their pitch, I explained to them, we do not want all the cars from an 8-storey car park coming into Fulham streets. And I said, why stand? A stand that has a food court, a stand that has a hotel, a stand that has a STEM accelerator, a convention centre, maybe a club, and lots of different things to make it the best place to go and watch a football game. I must admit, I was surprised in that meeting where they said, we will do that then. I often joke about that with the chief executive. As he left, I told him that I was surprised he'd agreed so readily, and he just said he loved the idea. It now is a place that is a centre of a fintech accelerator. It's an example of how we approach our plan on economics and how municipal entrepreneurialism works. We see ourselves piecing together a jigsaw because we do not have vast amounts of cash. We do not have vast amounts of hard power like the German lender in city-states, but we do have convening power. We do have power of persuasion. And if the idea is good, people will invest into it. It's one of the most fundamental principles that there is in investment. This is the process we've approached in almost every case. And these are the people who are signing up on some of our most interesting ideas. The best for me is the pathway bond. Having spoken to local school children and seen their enthusiasm for it, and seen the daunting challenges they face when they are asked the question, what are you going to do the rest of your life? How is that new world economy going to shape? And we say, we have arranged for you to get work experience, mentors, support, inspiration, and all sorts of other benefits. And so far, thousands of children, despite us only launching it last year, have taken part. Our aim is by the end of our next part, every single child will have access to the pathway bond. And I am so grateful to all the teachers, the head teachers in all our schools who are working with us to shape the pathway bond, to make sure that it is transformative. I'm grateful to Darren Jones, the Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, who said the pathway bond was something that he thinks can be rolled out across the country. And I think it is one of those ways, using entrepreneurial municipal government, that we can transform lives by bringing people together to do the right thing, particularly for our young people. And whilst it starts with our young people, we want to extend it to all people. But one step at a time, it's an idea that will come of its time, and it's an idea that is already working for thousands of local children. All these things we do align to our overarching vision of Hammersmith and Fulham as an inclusive economic centre where opportunity and life chances are abundant, and we go out of the way, the extra mile, to make sure we share them with everybody. In a world that's changing faster than ever before, we aim to shape it, not cower from it. At a time when people worry about the future and generally the sense of pessimism around the Western world, we stand here as optimists, looking to the future with ambition and determination. This budget puts the building blocks in place to take all of us forward in this borough, but we're just getting going. I am therefore extremely grateful to Councillor Rowan Ree and the team of finance officers who put this budget together. But budgets aren't just about the finance team. If they are, then there's something going wrong. So I'm grateful to everyone in our cabinet who made sure that ruthless financial efficiency is now part of how they operate. It's a Hammersmith and Fulham Labour operating system. I'm grateful to the audit committee, the district auditors for holding to us account, to the peer reviewers who raised good questions and gave us good advice, cross-party advice, but good advice it was. And to Sharon Lee and the senior leadership team of officers of this council, the best I've ever worked with, who have delivered such a tight budget and delivering such value for money for our residents. Now, I remember when we first won in those early days, we had a number of people who had voted for us. And the then chief executive said, "What's that number?" And I said, "That's my boss." He said, "Your boss?" So I said, "Technically, everyone who lives here is my boss, but I'm particularly fond of those ones." It dawned on him that we would always put our residents first. Value for money is the essence of what we do. And we're able to say to our residents that if you live in Hammersmith and Fulham, you will get services from us, the council, but also from the team of wider members of the public we've brought together that you simply don't get if you live anywhere else. You simply don't. That's what we're able to say because of this budget. This is a budget that ignores doom-mongers, the whingers, the whiners, who tell things are impossible, defies those things, and looks to the future with hope. This budget will make this borough stronger, safer, and kinder. And it will work for people that we got elected to serve. I commend this budget to all in the chamber. Thank you.
I call on the Leader of the Opposition, Councillor Jose Alfonso, to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Today, I respond to a budget that reveals in the starkest possible terms the consequences of Labour governance in Westminster and this town hall. This is not simply a budget that disappoints. It's a budget that exposes administration out of ideas, out of money, and out of excuses. And it is the residents of Hammersmith and Fulham, hard-working families, pensioners, small business owners, public servants who will pay the price. What I want to do this evening is take members through this budget line by line, not the press release, not the spin, the actual numbers. Because when you strip away the rhetoric, you find that this is a council that is raising charges on everything it can think of, stripping support from the most vulnerable, and hoping that nobody notices the black hole that is opening up beneath our feet. But let us begin with the national context, because the budget does not exist in isolation. Just 16 months ago, their Chancellor told the country that £40 billion in tax rises was the painful but necessary medicine, and that we would never have to go through it again. Then, 12 months later, the government came back for another 26 billion. Why? Because Labour promised growth, systematically extinguished growth through anti-business policies and tax raids, and has once again had to turn to the taxpayers to fill the hole they created, as they do, time and time again. And let's be specific about what that means for people in this borough. The so-called mansion tax will not hit mansions. It will hit ordinary family homes right across Hammersmith and Fulham. The homes of teachers, nurses, the small business owners, the families who have worked hard to put down roots in this borough. High property values do not necessarily equate with high incomes, and this tax willfully ignored that. Fundamentally, it will also not benefit Hammersmith and Fulham at all. None of the money comes to Hammersmith and Fulham Council. Furthermore, the continued freeze on income threshold is a stealth tax that drags more and more working people into higher brackets. Combined with these new national insurance contributions on salary sacrifice schemes, these measures will punish people who are doing the right thing, saving into pensions, using childcare vouchers, planning for their futures. But also, increases to taxes on income from property, savings, dividends, directly penalise the entrepreneurs, the investors, the savers, the people who create growth in our economy. So when they move away, as thousands of our most productive have, at the very moment we need investment and enterprise, the government is sending exactly the wrong signal. But let me turn to our own borough, because now we have much greater clarity on the impact of the government's local finance reforms on our borough. And the picture is even worse than anticipated. Our funding is being cut far more severely than expected, with the projection hitting a staggering £133.9 million loss in funding by 28-29, a shortfall that would inevitably fall on residents to fill. To mitigate this funding drop, the government has granted Hammersmith and Fulham special permission to exceed the standard 4.99% council tax cap for 2 years without a referendum. Only one of 6 councils able to do so, allowed to impose unlimited tax rise on our residents without their democratic consent. And the government's rhetoric has made it clear. They think we don't pay enough council tax here in Hammersmith and Fulham. Make no mistake, this is not a favour to our residents. This is Westminster, under your party, washing its hands of responsibility while empowering them, you guys, to raid household budgets. I now understand what you guys mean when you say your government learns from you. Both of you use residents as cash cows. Both of you rely on stealth taxes as the preferred method of raising revenue. And both of you promise one thing at elections and deliver something entirely alternative while in office. But the council tax is only the beginning. Buried in paragraph 46, this budget applies a blanket 3.8% uplift to hundreds of non-commercial, non-parking fees based on last September's CPI figure. Now, this backwards-looking CPI figure, the council's own report at paragraph 32 tells us that inflation has moderated and that the Bank of England expects CPI to reach 2.5% this year and hits its 2% target by 2027, as it was under Rishi Sunak. So why are we using a figure of 3.8%? Because it maximizes income. It's a deliberate choice to inflate charges ahead of the actual rate of inflation. And then we come to Appendix E, the so-called expectations to the standard uplift. You might think expectation means lower. You'd be wrong. Many of them are far higher. Scaffolding damage deposits up 33% from £750 to £1,000. Market traders waste bags up 44% from £2.36 to £3.40. CCTV footage requests up 22%. This is for the people who have been victims of crime, remember? The Street Works administration fee doubled from 10% to 20%. Street lamp coordination fees up 10%. Magazine dispenser licenses up 10%. Naming a new address up 11% at a time when we want to encourage house building. These aren't just inflation adjustments. They are revenue raids on builders, on traders, on small business owners, on anyone who has the misfortune of needing a permit from this council, all hidden in the small print, all the things they don't want you to know about. But it gets worse. Appendix E does not just hike existing fees, it invents entirely new ones. Want to hold a community event in the park? That will be a new £35 monitoring fee, even if you're a charity. Running a commercial event? There's a new environmental investment fee, and the amount, price on application. They haven't even decided what to charge you yet. They just want the power to charge you something. Left your event infrastructure out too long? £100, new charge. Got a banner up? £100 per banner to remove it, new charge. But here is the one that should concern every small shopkeeper on the Uxbridge Road, on King Street, on the North End Road. This budget introduces an entirely new shopfront trading license regime. If you displayed goods up to 2 meters from your shop entrance, that's now £1,000. £150 for a new license on public land. Up to 3 meters, £1,250. Want to sell anything from your front garden? You now need a license. £100 to apply, £75 a year to renew. Those poor lemonade stands. We are literally licensing people to sell things from their own front gardens, and then we wonder why we don't have a culture of entrepreneurship. Now, I want to draw members' attention to a measure that I think reveals the true character of this budget. a measure I find genuinely difficult to reconcile with the talk of a compassionate council. Appendix C tells us that the council is increasing court summons costs by £20 per summons for council tax defaulters. Expected yield, £157,000. Chair, who receives a council tax summons? The people who are already struggling to pay. The people already in debt. The people of the cost of living crisis has hit the hardest. And we are loading an extra £20 onto each summons and calling it efficiency. That isn't efficiency. That is extraction from the most vulnerable. And you know what? From what I've read in the papers, it's one rule for their councillors and another rule for the residents of Hammersmith and Fulham. And while we're taking money away from those who can least afford it, let us look at another line in Appendix C. Change policy to zero relief for residents and tenants associations and voluntary aided schools, saving £100,000. £100,000 in a net budget of 222.9 billion, 0.04% of the budget. And for that, we are stripping business rates relief from residents' associations, tenants' associations, and voluntary aided schools, the organisations that hold communities together, the groups that run the summer fetes, organise the litter picks, and give residents voices. Is that really the priority? Now, let me turn to the savings side, because this is where the serious questions arise about the credibility of this budget. Appendix C includes, under adult social care, a one-off stretch target of £1.75 million. The description, improving the range of local services targeting one-off opportunities and innovating preventative services. That's an aspiration wrapped in a buzzword. It has no project plan, no delivery timeline, no named responsible officer. It's a plug figure, and it accounts for 18% of the total service savings of £9.5 million. If it doesn't materialise, and stretch targets do have a habit of not materialising, the council faces an immediate in-year pressure of nearly £2 million. But Madam Mayor, all of this pales beside the medium-term picture. Turn to Appendix B, Table 2, the numbers are stark. By 27-28, the projected budget gap and the lower number, the Cabinet Member for Finance got upset at Cabinet when I used the worst-case scenario, is £31.4 million. By 2028-29, £57.3 million. £57.3 million. After assuming every saving is delivered, after transitional funding tapers away. Government grants fall from 85.9 million this year to just 43.9 million by 28-29. The business rates tariff paid to central government has already quadrupled from 12.8 million to 53.6. This borough collects over 300 million in business rates and keeps 10% under their government. And what's the plan to close the gap? Appendix B offers us AI, property rationalization, workforce planning, policy choices. No figures, no accountability, no strategy, wish list. But Madam Mayor, let's now turn to their record. Turn to what is not merely an administrative failing, but a moral scandal. One that had persisted under this Labour administration's watch for years, and one which our residents have paid the price with their health, their dignity, and their quality of life. Hammersmith and Fulham Council under Labour holds a distinction that no council should ever want. Under their stewardship, the Housing Ombudsman branded us the worst landlord for damp and mould in the entirety of the country. Not amongst the worst, not in the bottom quartile, the worst. Number one, top of the league table. Lest we forget, found a maladministration rate of 10.8 findings per 10,000 homes. 3 times worse than the next landlord on that list. We were not just failing, we were failing on an industrial scale. And it didn't stop there. This council was also found to be the worst in England at handling complaints about damp and mould. 3.3 maladministration findings per 10,000 homes. So not only were the residents living in appalling conditions, but when they had the courage to complain, their complaints were mishandled too. The Ombudsman found that residents were, and I quote, systematically blamed for the damp and mould in their own homes. Let's pause on that. Families with children, elderly residents, people with asthma, with respiratory conditions. They reported black mold creeping across their walls, and this council's response was to tell them that was their fault. That's not the hallmark of a compassionate administration. That is the hallmark of an institution in denial. Then came the Housing Ombudsman's special investigation in February 2024, a step reserved only for the most serious cases of systemic failure. The findings were devastating. 85 findings across 33 cases with a maladministration rate of 85%. The Ombudsman found residents left feeling anything but secure in their own homes after multiple and repeated failures. But the cases weren't abstract statistics. It was windows that couldn't be closed, leaving homes insecure. A window frame that fell out of a property into the garden below. Ceiling debris falling on the head of a child. These are the conditions this administration presided over while assuring us everything was under control. It's fair to say, when last year, I'm sad he's not here actually, Councillor Campbell Simon, elected in 2022 as a Labour councillor, said of his former colleagues, the Labour administration in Hammersmith and Fulham is failing the people it was elected to serve. It brings it really into context. But then again, when your ethos is one where councillors are punished for speaking up, and where residents' voices are too often ignored, as so aptly said by Councillor Collins, wait a minute, she was also elected as a Labour councillor in 2022. You can see how that could occur. The fundamental question is this then, how did it come to this? This is one of the wealthiest boroughs in the country, yet under continuous Labour control, our social housing tenants, some of the most vulnerable people in our borough, have been left to live in conditions which are a disgrace. The answer lies in priorities. This is an administration that has found hundreds of millions for vanity capital projects while basic repairs went undone. Families sleeping in rooms covered with black mould while the council built monuments to itself. Which brings me to the wonderful civic campus which we're in this evening, which doesn't even have working power sockets in this room. What was once promised as a forward-thinking investment in our borough's future has just come to be a tale of their mismanagement in office. I'm glad we're here, but it's not done. And it's almost 3 years overdue now, and millions over budget. 3 years late, 3 years of ballooning construction costs. It wasn't an unforeseen disaster. It wasn't unavoidable. It was a failure of project management, as we've seen in so many other areas. Just imagine what better use could have been made of that money for the betterment of our borough, rather than their big red monument to municipal socialism. All the while, they're taking a massive risk, playing wannabe commercial landlord at a time when commercial property is struggling in the area. And Madam Mayor, we turn to Hammersmith Bridge, which has now been closed to motorised traffic for almost 7 years. They still have no plan, no confirmed funding, no reopening date. Repair bill has ballooned from 40 million to £250 million, with 54 million already spent, precious little to show beyond bicycles being able to go over it. What makes this failure even more remarkable is that the administration has never actually conducted an economic assessment of the closure. 7 years of disruption to businesses, residents and commuters on both sides of the river. And they can't tell us what that's cost because they haven't been bothered to find out. Because it was never really about affordability. It was about priorities. A Labour cabinet member even admitted openly at a committee in February that they are comfortable with the bridge staying closed to traffic permanently. Residents deserved honesty years ago. What they got instead was delay, excuse making, and a £250 million repair bill that's never going to be paid. Madam Mayor, we can't forget that Labour say one thing in the manifesto and deliver another in office. During the 2022 local elections, Labour promised to introduce borough-wide free parking outside of rush hour. 2 years into the term, they broke that commitment. I was amused to hear the leader of the council talking about parking charges earlier and stopping parking charges rises. They increased the cost of resident annual parking permits by 60% on average. A typical family car in Band 4 saw an increase of 90%. Under Labour, electric vehicles are being charged for the first time, costing residents with the greenest vehicles £125 a year. This comes alongside a 30% rise for visitors parking in the borough. Madam Mayor, we are completely opposed to these rises. Labour should not be using residents as cash cows, nor should they be penalising those who have done the right thing and opted for electric vehicles. We will reverse those parking charges on day one. But Madam Mayor, let me draw this together. Behind this budget lies a £57 million black hole, a Conservative estimate, a raft of stealth charges, the stripping of support from community groups, an administration that continues to prioritise vanity over the vulnerable. Our social housing tenants under 12 years of this administration have been subject to conditions that the Ombudsman has called the worst in England. This civic campus is 3 years late and millions over budget. Our parking charges have been hiked in a direct breach of a manifesto promise, and our residents face unlimited council tax rises without the democratic safeguard of a referendum. They raise your taxes nationally, they raise them locally, and Labour aren't really going to stop unless the public send them a clear message in May. We're not even 2 years into their government, and it's already worse than anyone could have ever imagined. Their Prime Minister promised not to raise taxes on working people, then introduced a tax on family homes. He promised to support local businesses, now threatens to run pubs and local businesses into the ground. He promised to back local communities. Now we're one of the 6 boroughs who, he says, do not pay enough council tax. No one knows what they're going to do next, least of all, it seems, the Labour Party. But you can guarantee this, from their national government to this council, they aren't on your side. All they have left, as we heard earlier, is Project Flair and clinging to the past. He was the future once, but now he runs a tired administration that is out of steam and out of ideas. It is time for a change here in Hammersmith and Fulham. Only we, the Conservatives, have the energy and the vision to deliver better borough and a better future for our borough. A borough where the council puts the priorities of residents as its mission. Only we, the Conservatives, have a clear plan for what we want our borough to look like, from delivering safer streets and better services to keeping taxes low and getting our borough moving. Madam Mayor, the choice is clear on May 7th. 4 more years of failure under Labour or a safer, better borough under the Conservatives.
I've been informed councillors Homan, Pascal Talbert, Francis Ume, Azal Khan, Ree, and Carmel would also like to speak. Okay, Councillor Homan.
Thank you, Mayor. As Chair of the Policy and Overview Committee, I'm pleased to contribute to this evening's budget debate, and I'm absolutely delighted to be back in this chamber this evening doing so. I'm going to actually talk a bit about scrutiny and a bit about the involvement of councillors in the way they've contributed to this budget. I'm not going to comment about the speech we've just heard because I didn't see any vision in that whatsoever. Let's not be in any doubt. Budgets across all public services are under pressure. Every day we hear about those struggles. Every day we hear about another council going bust or needing a bailout. It is therefore a real testament to this council and everyone involved that we are able to present the budget before you this evening, whilst maintaining and improving services to all our residents. This, colleagues, is not by accident, it is by choice. Choices made by this Labour Council. Choices that have been both challenged and strengthened by scrutiny from the Policy and Accountability Committees, the Audit Committee and Policy and Overview. I'm not going to hone in on specific issues. The leader has already spoken and we'll hear more later. But I do want to acknowledge the role of the PACs in examining the service budgets and thank Councillors Antonides, Daly, Perez, Rowbottom, Trahey and Vaughan for the work that they have done as chairs, and to the work of Councillor Walsh, who is the chair of the Audit Committee and has ensured our financial controls and governance remain strong. At Policy and Overview Board, we have focused on the strategic direction of the Council, shaping the years ahead with the context of ever-reducing budgets, and whilst firmly rooted in the public interest, and ensuring that we always do things with residents, not to residents. This year, we've considered a number of efficiencies that will shape the long-term Council's effectiveness. These include AI and data ethics, ensuring emerging technologies support services responsibly, transparently and accountably. Digital inclusion, making sure that no resident is left behind as we move services online. Co-production, ensuring residents and community groups shape services at the outset with us. And the REAP programme, improving service pathways for our residents, reducing the barriers for those who need help to access them most. And looking at service transformation programmes, testing major organisational change to ensure that it delivers value and maintains quality. And last but not least, this Labour Council's ongoing commitment to support residents with the cost of living crisis that many we know face. Turning to the wider budget, the Policy and Accountability Committees have played a central role. PACs have scrutinised investment in infrastructure such as CCTV. There's been essential oversight of early years, safeguarding youth services and skills pathway, supported by the innovative pathway bond we heard about earlier. Ensuring support for young people remains future focus and is properly funded. There has been scrutiny of the healthcare partnerships, adult social care transformation plans, addressing workforce pressures in the area, demand and the quality of service, while maintaining Labour's commitment to free adult social care. There's been commitment to climate change action, and across all the committees' scrutiny this year have been actively strengthening decision-making and ensuring that residents remain at the centre of their work. This budget is shaped by the collaboration of a budget grounded in the long-term responsibility and holds true to this Labour Council being stronger, safer and kinder. This is not by accident, this is by choice. These are the choices this Labour Council has made. I highly recommend this budget to you this evening. Thank you.
Talbert?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. It is a pleasure to be speaking after the Leader of the Opposition, who has been, to use a phrase they used to call Keir Starmer, before he interviewed Peter Mandelson for a job, forensic. I have some sympathy for the plight of the Labour Party. They have been dealt the worst hand ever by their friends in Westminster. and it must hurt, bitterly hurt, to get so relentlessly shafted. I suspect many on their side, opposite, thought that with one of their number representing them in the Commons, life would be just dandy with no evil ideological Tories throttling the money. Well, here's Labour's ideology. Our taxes are too low, apparently, so we have to pay more. It must also bitterly hurt to have paraded the mantra of ruthless financial efficiency, which I'm not going to knock, it's a great Tory phrase, for so long, and then sees those efficiencies be removed in one fell swoop by the cold dead hand of the state. One Labour MP in a constituency beginning with H had the courage to stand up for his voters and tell the Prime Minister he will not accept his constituency to be condemned to higher taxes or devastating austerity. How sad that it was the MP for Hartlepool, the current one, not the 1997 one, and not Hammersmith, let alone Chancellor Fulham, because let's face it, the only thing Labour is good at fighting for locally is a table for two at the River Cafe. This budget document says some have chosen to scaremonger about what the future has in store. To avoid those accusations, I make the following very factual points. 1, the central estimates of the funding gap in 27-28 and 28-29 are 31.4, then 57.3 million, respectively. 2, the main lever the council has for revenue increases is council tax, for which receipts to the council are normally just under 100 million. 3, other efficiencies or fee increases get you in the low millions, cumulatively at best. You do the sums. So why not be honest and level with the public about the fiscal black hole? I'll tell you why. It's because this is a council that is about spinning, not leading, about playing games, not serving residents. Here's an example of the double think. 1, the council is running at maximum efficiency, and 2, the council can now find 9.5 million of largely unspecified savings. Choose one. Now, last month, we had the Boris Johnson Tribute Act. We were told not to worry about the Civic Centre overspend. It was minimal. It was going to be a super duper project, very green, very lovely, and what we needed is to big up the borough. Well, this month, it's the Nigel Farage and the Year Youssef Tribute Act. 9.5 million? Sure, we got this. How? Efficiencies. Efficiencies with round numbers. The ones, Madam Mayor, they bothered to set out in any detail are either ludicrous, 500k by adding card transaction fees in this day and age, or they hit valid activities such as building work hard, or they're exactly the sort of council micromanagement that makes people's lives miserable, making charities pay for a community market stall, putting business rates liabilities on tenants' associations, and surely the most egregious one, making families stunt up £100 if their 7-year-old wants to sell lemonade from the front garden. I also note that what's not going up with inflation is the projected pay award for council staff, which currently sits at 0.7% below inflation. I hope they negotiate better than you have done with government. Madam Mayor, we know that local Labour have been dealt a dud hand. Either they agree that we don't pay enough taxes, or they're too weak to fight against it. Either way, our residents lose out, as they have lost out over the years, from multi-million-pound lawsuits to £100,000 piano tunes, to overspend the party opposite asks us to dismiss as marginal. But what is shameful is they seem not to respect residents of Hammersmith and Fulham enough to be honest with them. It is a sign of decadence, of a party in power for too long, more caught up in internal power struggles and playing sixth form games, treating our residents as a mildly inconvenient background to their hubris, sometimes to be patronised, mainly to be fleeced. This is the wrong budget for Labour to have delivered. The best I can say about it is it has increased the chances of it being their last. Thank you very much.
Councillor Francis Ume.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One of the great truths of public service is that the measure of a society lies not in its wealth, but how it cares for its people. Investing in people and places, even when the climate around us is difficult, is what this budget is all about. Across London and beyond, councils are navigating unprecedented pressures with rising demand for support in social care, housing, families, and the ongoing cost of living pressures felt deeply by residents. Unsurprisingly, what we've heard today from that side of the chamber was a clear failure to grasp the facts, the tough choices that many local authorities are facing, thanks to years of austerity measures from the previous government, and the actual real difference this budget will make for our residents. This administration has always believed that public services should be a foundation of dignity, opportunity, and community, that no one should be left behind. And so we are confronting the challenges head on with this budget that delivers more for less, as we have done since 2014. Since 2014, this administration has maintained the third lowest council tax in the country, offering support with nearly 40% of households receiving a discount or not having to pay. More widely, this administration continues to push for efficiencies, and through those efficiencies, using effective budgeting and channeling that into frontline services. Through this budget, we'll continue to provide free breakfast for children in schools, offering 4,000 breakfasts daily, a pioneering Hammersmith and Fulham policy. We'll continue to deliver compassion and action through our adult social care services. We scrapped home care charges, and now almost 2,000 elderly and disabled residents get the support they need for free. We'll provide a broader public health offer, support a cleaner and greener borough, a tougher community safety offer, with advanced CCTV and enforcement officers on patrol to keep our streets safe, and funding to support women, girls, children who are affected by violence, with safety support and dignity at the centre of our work. And now housing. In the face of rising housing needs and intense economic pressure, our housing service is working relentlessly to prevent homelessness, to deliver a balanced housing revenue account with £5 million in reserves. And we're investing nearly £1 billion over 12 years so we can maintain and improve our homes to ensure that they are decent and safe. We're also providing safe and stable accommodation, despite temporary accommodation costs now hitting nearly £5.5 million a day across London. And we're building new, affordable, energy-efficient homes, such as those in Hartop-on-Lannoy, Farm Lane, Lily Road, and investment in homes in the West Kensington and Gibbs Green estate. We're investing £2.5 million in the community and facilities with a new play area, an estate the Conservative opposition tried to demolish. As we've heard tonight, a £12 billion scheme which was to be sold for £100 million. Together with residents, we stopped it, and people should never forget that. However, what has the Conservative opposition's record been exactly? They entered this local authority into an underfunded repairs contract, which had a detrimental effect on the service delivery. Through this administration's leadership and tough action plan, pleased to say that we've made a real difference to the housing repair service. And the Ombudsman has even emphasised this through recognising the leadership and positive changes that have been made to address the challenges that we faced. In addition to this, independent audits from Mazars have highlighted the strong leadership in repairs and compliance delivery, with strong scores received for both. Our commitment and belief in council housing and social housing is evident, and so is our record. Our management indicators put Hammersmith and Fulham in the upper quartile across many areas. For example, our compliance rate shows a 99.9% delivery across areas such as water safety, fire safety, electrical safety, and in many cases up to 100%. When it comes to repairs, 98.9% of all jobs are completed within a 3-month timeframe. We've also responded to Awaab's law, new legislation brought in to tackle damp and mould, and we've done this for a specialist damp and mould team with cross-council services working together with public health to ensure that 94% of jobs are delivered within target. And our residents have highlighted this in our latest tenant satisfaction measures, with 26% of residents feeling, an increase of 26% of residents feeling satisfied overall with the service that's provided, and 73% stating they are satisfied that their homes are safe. Overall, this is a really balanced budget, which is focused on people, another in a long line of budgets that we've delivered. It's forward-looking, it's focused on mission, and we're not leaving anyone behind.
Thank you, Councillor Ume.
Thank you very much, and I would like to commend this report to this chamber. Thank you.
Councillor Afzal Khan.
Madam Mayor, there is no better way to judge a council than how it treats children. I am a teacher and a mother, which is why it pains me to see how in this budget, this administration is letting young people down. We are all proud of the outstanding rating our children's services received in 2024, but it is now 2026. And the score rating previous performance cannot be used as a shield to justify the regressive and burdensome decisions made today, affecting all our children's tomorrows. Because beneath the celebratory language, the numbers tell a very different story. This borough is being asked to do more with less, much less. We are facing a reduction in core spending power of £11.3 million. The administration tells us this is fair funding. They tell us this is responsible stewardship. But what does fair mean when our tariff payment to the central government has quadrupled to £53.6 million? That is £53.6 million leaving Hammersmith and Fulham. Money generated here by our businesses and our residents. Money that should be supporting our schools, our children, and our most vulnerable families. But instead, it is being siphoned away. And what are we left with? Any incapable administration's favorite catch-all phrase, efficiencies. We are told there will be £380,000 service efficiency saving in children and young people's services. Let's call that what it is, funding gap. I do not believe for a second that this administration is capable of integrating services further without massively diluting the quality of care for the 727 children in need and 253 subject to child protection plans. What this means plainly is fewer hours, fewer specialists, fewer safeguards. Those vulnerable young people in our care as a government will be let down. And then we come to SEND. Over 3,600 children in this borough require support. 1,858 have education, health and care plans. Demand is rising. Transport costs are rising. Complexity is rising. Yet what reassurance does this budget offer? What structural solution? What long-term investment? None. None. The government's white paper, Every Child Achieving and Thriving, speaks of a move away from EHCPs towards individual support plans. As a teacher, let me tell you exactly what that means. That is an unbearable workload transfer from the town hall to the classroom. The government asks teachers, already stretched to their limits, to become clinicians, psychologists, and caregivers, while their budgets are being slashed. The government's only answer is to wait for a 2026 reform plan offering no clarity on deficits that threaten our schools' financial stability. Meanwhile, the government plans to scrap free school meals as the funding metric in favour of household income, creating an enormous cloud of volatility for our residents with no local risk assessment for how this will hit our school budgets in a borough defined by its extreme pockets of in-work poverty. This is all an enormous betrayal. But of course, as we have come to expect, there is more. This government decided to impose 20% VAT on independent school fees, a policy supported by both our Labour MPs. Families who cannot absorb that increase will turn to the state sector mid-year, mid-cycle, and where will those children go? Into a system already straining under SEND, demand, and school place pressures? Everyone suffers more the Labour way. If the rhetoric is mainstream inclusion, then where is the investment in education psychology? Where is the early help? Where is the workforce expansion that makes inclusion real? It is certainly not in this budget. Madam Mayor, we also see cherished local assets being placed at risk. The Fulham bilingual partnership treasured by families has no clear financial guarantee. Parents fear the collapse of this partnership, fear uncertainty, fear instability. And what does this administration offer them? Words, but no dedicated funding stream. Madam Mayor, This budget is a house of cards. It is propped up by £6 million in temporary transitional relief. Money will run out and disappear. And when it does, we are left staring at a projected budget gap of over £57 million in
Councillor Abdel Khan,
2028.
thank you very
I
much
do not
indeed.
recommend this budget. Thank you very much.
Councillor Reid.
Madam Mayor, I'm willing to reserve my right to speak until after Councillor Carmel has, in case he has any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Carmel.
Thank you. Sorry, I was not expecting that to come up straight away. Sorry, I'm getting pages in order now. Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's wonderful to be back here in this council chamber. And given events in May, this will also be the final meeting for some councillors tonight, some from retirement, voluntary, and some from rather more less voluntary retirement. But to everyone whose last meeting this is, thank you. We all here in this chamber understand the financial cliff that is facing us. Even the government has realised that they have turned the screws on us and our neighbours to the extent that this government has said that we will be suffering, and they have not yet U-turned on the transitional relief that they've currently granted us. This transitional relief is going to be our lifetime in the face of the cuts being imposed on us and our residents. But the key word is transitional. It's a sticking plaster for a bleak financial future. The Leader of the Council talked about, in his speech, talking about mislead all of the people all of the time. I'm sure that the Leader of the Council will remember on the 17th of July 2019, his answer to my question to him at one of the last full council meetings in this chamber, when he specifically promised that Hammersmith Bridge would be open to motorised traffic within 3 years. I've never heard the Leader of the Council apologise for that statement. I checked this evening, and a news report of his comments is still up online. So does he have the courage now to admit that he made a promise that he could not keep? Has he got the courage now to apologise? And most importantly, has he got the courage to tell us here tonight if he will tell the people, not just of this borough, but also the myriads of people impacted by the closure, when Hammersmith Bridge will be reopened to motorised traffic? Or does he not have the courage of his previous statement in July 2019? And will he fudge, evade, or ignore? We've heard quite a lot this evening about the need to raise new revenue to plug the gaps that this Labour government is forcing upon us. Indeed, but what happens if the plans do actually provide much needed funds as opposed to the expectation that they will? Indeed, at the last council meeting, the Labour administration even brought forward their own special motion number 7 on the green investment bonds. You may recall, Madam Mayor, I spoke on this motion and asked, having read some of the back papers, as opposed to relying on the self-congratulatory backslapping used in the wording of the motion, I asked about delays to expenditure, and we were informed, and I quote, "Firstly, around unallocated funds, we certainly don't plan to have any unallocated funds." I, and no doubt you, Madam Mayor, took comfort from these words. After the meeting, however, I read some more of the information, and indeed, and forgive me if I quote, on the abundanceinvestment.com website, /council, /Hammersmith and Fulham, /green-projects-delivered, it says that as of the 11th of November 2025, the London Borough of Hammersmith and Fulham had raised a sum of £3,255,109. It then goes on to state that of this £3,255,109, that the spend on green projects so far, as of the 11th of November 2025, was £479,593, and that unallocated funds still to be spent were on the 11th of November, £2,775,000, 516. I referred in my speech to various procedures required to be undertaken about unallocated funds. Given those figures, either abundance is not giving us the full picture as to what the funds are, or have these procedures been implemented? I will end with saying that I was chatting to a non-political friend of mine about the prospects for the local elections in May in London. And he looked at me and he said, well, you know, Alex, Labour are voted in by people with great hopes, and they're voted out by people with empty pockets.
Councillor Carmel,
Thank you, Mayor.
very much. I return now to you, Councillor Ree.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. If you'll indulge me for a moment before we start, I'd just like to thank the leader and my cabinet colleagues and all of the officers who've worked so hard to put this budget together. Every year it seems to get harder and harder, and I can't see that changing in the future. In particular, I'd like to thank Sharon Lee. I'd like to thank Sukhvinder Khalsi. I'd like to particularly thank James Newman, who's stepped in and stepped up to a fantastic degree over the last few months. I want to thank Gary, Alex, Tony, Kelly, Danny Prakash, Liz and Craig for all the fantastic work that they have done in helping us put together a balanced budget in the most difficult of circumstances. Now, the Leader of the Opposition spoke for 20 minutes, mercifully shorter than his predecessor. But sadly, he came up pretty short in terms of what he said. He relied heavily on discussing national politics. Now, while I welcome the late conversion of the opposition to the anti-austerity agenda, it does reek of rank hypocrisy when their government reduced the funding to Hammersmith and Fulham by 54% in real terms, and not one of them has said a word against this. Now, they're absolutely right to point out that there are a lot of savings that we need to make. But we've already been able to achieve this in the past. We're currently doing it, and we will do it again. The Leader of the Council, in his opening remarks, mentioned that we had already saved £156 million as an administration by getting more for less and acting with ruthless financial efficiency. This is something we will continue to do and that will shape our vision for the borough. Now, there was no mention of what the opposition would do on tax in the Leader of the Opposition's speech. A small matter, it must have slipped his mind. But he did say that he would reverse parking charges in the borough. He didn't tell the drivers of Hammersmith and Fulham what infrastructure and what parking services they will slash in order to pay for this. Call it dodgy accounting, call it voodoo economics, whatever it is, the numbers just don't add up. Residents of this borough, drivers in this borough, can't afford the cost of a kamikaze Conservative council. Now, Councillor Homan spoke about the importance of scrutiny when it comes to running a council and indeed putting a budget together. And I'm delighted that in the last few weeks, I've been able to go and see the Policy Oversight Board, the PACs, and that the Audit Committee works so hard to scrutinise council spending. Also, in the last year, we've had the LGA peer review, which gave us a glowing bill of health, and as the leader says, some interesting and useful recommendations. We also have our external auditors, Grant Thornton. But it's also great to hear from members of the public and what they think about what's going on in the administration. Last summer, one particular resident of the borough told the My London website that the council was well managed and that we were able to keep council tax low through prudent financial management. Well, I couldn't put it better myself. That resident, of course, was Councillor Jose Afonso. We heard from Councillor Pascal Toubre. Now, I'll take his word on securing a table at the River Cafe, but his arguments, sadly, were pretty undercooked. Now, he mentioned tax, again, didn't say what it was the opposition would do around tax. And I'm not surprised that they're not willing to discuss this topic, because as I've said before, and I will say again, there is nowhere better to be a council taxpayer than right here in Hammersmith and Fulham. Not only do we have the third lowest rates in the country, but 4 in 10 households receive some sort of discount through our comprehensive council tax support scheme, which we have expanded in recent years. On Councillor Carmel's point, I'll respond to that in the Treasury Management paper, if I may. This is a budget that secures the services unique to Hammersmith and Fulham that residents value so much. Free home care, something we've had for over 10 years that's helped over 5,000 residents who would otherwise have had to pay. More CCTV per person than anywhere in the country. £1.4 million invested in free breakfasts, serving over 4,000 breakfasts a day, a policy that's been copied now by the Mayor of London and central government. £3.5 million given out to support local charities through our third sector investment fund. Family hubs, the law enforcement team. I can go on, and I would, given the time. But I'd just like to say this is a budget that makes us a stronger, safer, kinder borough, and I commend it to the council. Thank you very much.
I call on the leader to sum up.
Thanks very much. You know, I should say I'm absolutely delighted to see Councillor Carmel back here. I'm sorry he's stepping down. I would take this opportunity to say to everybody who served in this borough, thank you for your service. It is greatly appreciated. And I know we often disagree on things, but I do know we agree that serving this borough is the privilege of our lives. So thank you, Alex Carmel, and everybody else who might be stepping down. Just on your point, when Hammersmith Bridge closed, we spoke to the government and we said we would get a business plan and we asked them for money and they said we would have all of those things. Greg Hands, a former MP for Chelsea and Fulham, turned up at a public meeting on the 1st of August 2019 and bragged, maybe some of you were there, bragged that he had advised the government not to give us a penny and it could all be paid for out of the £25 million we were getting from parking at the time. And that's the problem with it. I generally think the Conservatives owe us an apology for the way they behaved on Hammersmith Bridge, not least because it went 5 times to administer our business plan, and we were told by officials it was turned down because they didn't want to make a decision on road charging because they thought it would hurt them politically, and they thought having Hammersmith Bridge closed benefited them politically, which it did not. So I make note, if anyone's going to be apologising here, it is the Conservative Party for the games they've played on this thing. And, you know, the fact that we debate it again and again, and the Leader of the Opposition even came to our cabinet meeting and sat there blank-faced, was reminded me of spaghetti falling through a fork. The person couldn't quite twirl it, as I thought that's the information, but it's failing to go in. And I explained the sagas of how our budget worked to the Leader of the Opposition, and it was similar to now. And despite this being an amazing sunny day, I did see a cloud settle over the opposition. And one of the things I've learned in the time I've been a councillor here is look at the faces of everybody else when someone's speaking. The look of angst when the Leader of Opposition spoke on his bench's faces. All of us saw it. All of us clocked it. It was telling. If you're going to seize power as the Leader of the Opposition, you need to have a vision. You need to be on top of stuff. You need to know what you're doing. I'll tell you what the best proof of the vision is we have for Hammersmith and Fulham. £6 billion worth of investment, more than all the rest of West London put together. It's the business community who queue up. It's the head teachers who queue up to be part of it. It's the people who work side by side with us to deliver on this vision. That's the proof of the pudding. The numbers speak for themselves. And when I set out my remarks earlier on, I talked about the doom mongers of 2014. And I thought about the ridiculous things. And those people in life who say something can't be done. The people who say something's impossible. The people who complain, they whinge, they moan. Those people, those naysayers, my experience in life is they never do anything. They stand on the sidelines and complain. That's what they do. And here we are again, all this time later to hear exactly the same whinging, moaning, unattributed, unanalytical analysis of a budget. No ideas of their own. We're never going to take lessons from them. We face two Conservative parties in this election, the Reform Party, and we face the Conservatives. That's what's happened, and they both have the same rotten values, the same pro-Brexit, the same approach of small statism that we heard tonight. And we stand here as the best guarantee of protecting a progressive Hammersmith and Fulham, a kinder place. We're the people who pioneered the youth parliament when the Conservatives argued against it, although some of them later tried to take credit for it. We're the people who put record investment into services. And after the election, that's what we will continue to do, because our residents, like us, know value for money and kindness when they see it.
Thank you very much. I have to advise that any member who is 2 months in arrears with their council tax payments cannot vote on the budget. I now move to the vote. As this is a vote on the budget, it is required that a roll call vote be taken. As we don't have a division bill for this meeting, Grant, please commence the roll call.
Thank you. Will councillors indicate how they wish to vote on the recommendation? Councillor Alexander, Councillor Antonides, Councillor Brown, Councillor Shafop-Verdier.
For.
Councillor Cowan.
For.
Councillor Daly. Councillor Harcourt.
For.
Councillor Harvey.
For.
Councillor Holder.
For.
Councillor Homan.
For.
Councillor James.
For.
Councillor Kwan.
For.
Councillor Lang. Councillor Nemo.
For.
Councillor Wabe.
For.
Councillor Panta.
For.
Councillor Patel. Councillor Perez.
For.
Councillor Kwam.
For.
Councillor Reid.
For.
Councillor Richardson. Councillor Schmidt.
For.
Councillor Sadiq.
For.
Councillor Ume Francis.
For.
Councillor Ume Mercy.
For.
Councillor Vaughan.
For.
Councillor Afonso.
Against.
Councillor Afzal Khan.
Against.
Councillor Alford.
Against.
Councillor Burland.
Against.
Councillor Brockbank Fowler.
Against.
Councillor Dana Sanderson.
Against.
Councillor Kamal.
Against.
Councillor Lloyd Harris.
Against.
Councillor Pascal Toulbert.
Against.
Councillor Stanton.
Against.
Thank you.
Okay, lovely. I hereby announce the outcome of the voting. For 26, against 10. No one not voting. The report and recommendations are carried. Okay. Moving now on to item 6.2, 4-year capital programme 2026 to 30 in capital strategy 2026 to 27. I call on Councillor Reid to move the report and recommendations.
Formally moved.
I've been informed Councillors Francis Ume, Downer Sanderson, Painter, Daly, Lang, and Nimmo would like to speak. Councillor Ume.
Madam Mayor, we are the landlord for nearly 12,000 tenanted homes and 5,000 leaseholder properties in this borough and have committed to nearly £1 billion worth of investment in them over the next 12 years. We all know what poor housing does, so that's why we're making these investments to provide better outcomes for all and will ensure we have an effective housing service alongside this to deliver those changes. We recognise where change is needed and are making those changes with a strong leadership team and action plan in place to deliver that. When it comes to our homes, we're upgrading our heating systems. We're replacing lifts, installing new kitchens and bathrooms, tackling damp and mould with an efficient and effective damp and mould specialist team, and ensuring the service responds to Arab's Law, the Social Housing Act, and building safety legislation, essential standards that are designed to protect and safeguard the well-being of our communities. When it comes to our Fire Safety Plus work, the programme put in place by our leader, Councillor Cowan, in 2016, has been about doing more than what is required of us as a local authority to keep all residents safe. We've been funding major packages of testing, fire safety doors, and other improvements and free equipment for our residents, all to keep our residents safe and living in decent homes. We've registered 49 high-risk buildings ahead of schedule with the building safety regulator, upgraded more than 4,000 fire doors with new doors installed for leaseholders at no cost to them, installed sprinklers in over 600 new homes, rolled out a new evacuation system in high-risk blocks, and also continue to produce person-centred fire risk assessments and personal emergency evacuation plans, or PEEPs, which have been regarded as best practice, with Hammersmith and Fulham's expertise contributing to wider local authority guidance on effective planning. Our work overall has been commended by the fire service, and to reinforce our safety commitment, we've commissioned an independent external audit which confirmed there is leadership and a strong focus on resident safety. We have compliance systems which are robust, with 98 to 100% compliance in key areas such as water, fire, gas, lifts and electrical safety. And we do all of this while keeping our residents in the room, with a resident-chaired fire safety repairs and building safety group introduced to scrutinise data, challenge officers and shape policy. And we're all very thankful for every single one of them that provides their time, energy and effort into making a difference into our housing service. Looking further ahead, we have a stock condition survey due to complete in the coming months to give us the evidence we need to shape our longer-term asset management strategy, guiding where and how we will invest in homes in the borough over the next decade. We'll also continue to rise to the challenge of the climate emergency through our retrofit strategy and investment in estates and delivering real improvements across our neighbourhoods. But what about new homes and facilities? Well, with thousands of households waiting for a home and some living in overcrowded conditions, we're continuing to build on our commitment to create a fairer future with our affordable housing programme, a very ambitious and robust programme providing homes for people who grew up here, who live here, work here, care for our elderly, teach in our schools, the list goes on. The homes are right across our borough in Ed City and White City, new homes at Hartop and Lannoy, Farm Lane and Lily Road in Fulham. And I also had the recent pleasure of helping to mark the opening of the Watermeadow Court homes, or also known as Chelsea Botanica in Fulham. These are new homes that offer modern city living and gardens which are enriched for biodiversity with a partnership with Kew Gardens. Every scheme is being designed with decarbonisation and energy efficiency built in, offering lower bills for residents, lower carbon for the borough. It's our climate policy in action. More widely, we'll continue to use our land properly to build community assets and renew schools and leisure centres. This administration, alongside dedicated officers, will continue to work hand in hand with residents to ensure that we're building an offer that makes everyone proud. We will direct that capital investment where it makes the biggest difference. So when people ask what this capital programme does, the answer is pretty simple. And sadly, what we fail to hear from that side of the chamber is any sort of ambition or record of delivery. All we've seen nationally is failure, and locally all we've seen is neglect. But this capital programme really answers the questions that residents are asking. It's all about making homes safer. It's about making homes warmer. It's about building new homes, investing in our public spaces and facilities, and it protects the social mix that makes this borough worth living in. And so I commend the programme and strategy to the council. Thank you.
Councillor Downer-Sanderson. .
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report sets out close to £500 million of capital investment across Hammersmith and Fulham. It is obviously important that we invest in capital. Estate upgrades, repairs and regeneration projects must go ahead. It is equally important we do it in the right way. After all, it is not our money, it is residents' money. Unfortunately, the council's track record on spending that money and getting projects delivered on time leaves much to be desired. Despite higher levels of borrowing and ever-increasing capital budgets, Hammersmith Bridge remains closed to traffic 7 years on. Council tenants continue to live in damp and mouldy homes, and this very building remains unfinished, set to be delivered 3 years late and at considerable cost, estimated at almost £180 million. In fact, I was looking through cabinet papers the other day, and the scheme that the previous administration put in place was criticised for costing £22 million. That was considered a waste of money by this Labour administration. That isn't evidence of ruthless financial efficiency. It suggests that the administration knows how to spend residents' money, but struggles to translate that into delivery. I know the Civic Campus programme has been the centre of attention at times tonight, but I want to focus in on two aspects of it: the commercial investment and the expansion of the town hall building itself. The commercial side is now expected to cost around £66 million. That is slightly over budget, and by the council's own projections, it will take 45 years to recover the cost of acquisition. That means the council will be exposed to commercial risk for almost half a century. And over that 45-year period, economic shocks are not a possibility, they are an inevitability. And as Conservatives, if we take control of the council, we will never gamble with taxpayer money. We will never make commercial investments that should never be made with taxpayer cash. So alongside this, you've got the refurbishment and the expansion of the town hall, which is now expected to cost £112 million. Back in 2019, the capital budget for this element was £46 million, with a further £36 million allocated for decant and accommodation. Whichever way you look at it, this project is now running tens of millions of pounds over budget. The cumulative effect is that this programme is costing the equivalent of more than £2,200 per household in Hammersmith and Fulham. More than 2 years of council tax for the average household in the borough. Now, at the same time, major investment in our housing stock is desperately needed, and in many cases cannot wait. However, it was shocking to many of us on this side to discover that leaseholder costs are expected to triple by 2030. That's an average increase of £1,000, over £1,000 per leaseholder, more than a full year of bandy council tax. You've made them pay for a town hall that was worth 2 years of council tax, and you're hitting them again for more works that they will probably not be consulted on because you haven't held the leaseholder for them, I understand, in quite some time. They shouldn't be punished simply because they own their homes. That doesn't make them immune to rising costs, and they must be consulted on major works as they come up. Now, these decisions are especially difficult to justify while residents are facing intense cost of living pressures. Charges are rising year after year, and this Labour government is increasing all forms of tax and introducing new taxes too, on everything from income to investments to property to savings. We will vote for this report only because we recognise that investment in our borough is necessary. Repairs and upgrades cannot wait. There are too many people whose lives and livelihoods depend on it. but we want to place on the record our warning
Thank you very
that the
much,
administration
Councillor
has got its
Sanderson.
priorities wrong.
Thank you. Councillor Painter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As a Lily councillor, I have the pleasure of spending a lot of my time on the Clematley estate. Many of the residents I speak to have grown up there, they've made their lives there. Some of them now even raise children of their own there. I find a real sense of community on the estate, with residents playing a vital role in shaping their surroundings and investing in the lives and futures of themselves and their neighbours. This Labour administration's £452 million capital programme represents a real commitment to deliver and to fund significant investment in this borough over the next 4 years, including in the council homes where it will make the biggest impact on residents' quality of life, their health and their well-being. The programme of investment will upgrade and deliver housing assets that residents can be proud of, and that will serve as a foundation for healthy, happy lives for the residents of Hammersmith and Fulham. The programme isn't just about bricks and mortar though, it's about dignity, opportunity, and our belief, this administration's belief, that every resident deserves a home they can be proud of, and that children who grow up in council housing should face no limit to their life chances. There should be nothing stopping a child living on the Clematley estate today from achieving the same heights as the Prime Minister that their home is named after. This programme is our commitment to providing 21st century homes that are truly fit for the future, homes that give every resident the opportunity to flourish. It's about not just investing in buildings, but in people, our people, in their families and in the future of our borough. I therefore take great pride, particularly when I'm on the Clematley estate, speaking to residents, or as the Mayor and I were last Friday, in the community hall, watching some of our youngest people perform in theatre that was funded by our Gangs, Violence and Exploitation Unit. I cannot ever imagine being part of an administration that would sell off such a vital asset. I don't know about you, but I couldn't sleep at night knowing that I supported an action that risks people's homes and caused untold anguish to the thousands of residents that I'm supposed to represent. And yet, that is exactly what the opposition did last time they were in power. You can shake your heads at me, but some of you sat across from me now were part of the administration that sold off the West Kensington and Gibbs Green estates for a cut price rate to private developers to be demolished and replaced by luxury flats to be sold to overseas investors who would probably never even live in this country, all the while expelling local hard-working people from their homes. Only after this administration, this Labour administration, took power and stood up for those residents were they finally able to know that their homes were safe from demolition, 12 long years after the Tories first drew up their plans to sell, with little thought for the impact it would have on residents' lives. 12 years is an awfully long time to worry about the security of your home. It's most of a childhood. It's a whole school career from reception to your GCSEs. Whenever we mention the sale of these estates, the opposition roll their eyes and pull their faces, showing exactly the level of contempt that they hold for Hammersmith and Fulham residents who live on council estates. But we are only holding up a mirror to the actions that you try so hard to forget. This administration values the residents on our estate. You sell off their houses. I wonder how many estate sales it would take to fund the true costs of your ludicrous bridge proposal. Would it be the Clematley estate, West Ken and Gibbs Green, or would it be the Queen Caroline? Fortunately, the residents of Hammersmith and Fulham are not turkeys celebrating Christmas. They have not forgotten the actions of the last Conservative administration, and come May the 7th, they will be sending that message. Residents tell us that they want investment in their homes and in their communities. That is what a Labour council does, that is what this administration does, and that is what this programme does. And so therefore, I commend the programme to the Chamber. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Every capital programme looks technical on paper, pages of figures, borrowing assumptions, acronyms, but capital is never just technical. It's never just financial. Capital is power. It's the power to decide whether land becomes homes or commodities, whether estates are protected or disposed of, whether civic buildings are strengthened or sold off, and whether a borough believes in itself. This is what this report is really about. Capital programmes are never neutral. They reveal what an administration values. They show whether we see land as something to trade or something to steward, whether public assets exist to generate short-term receipts or to shape the long-term life of a community. Under the last Conservative administration, land was positioned as something to unlock, recycle and move into the market. And we remember the battles. Gibbs Green, Sullivan Primary School, Charing Cross Hospital. These were not abstract disagreements about finance. They were arguments about whether our communities were secure or disposable. And in a global city like London, if you build primarily for sale, you are not building for nurses, teachers or families. You're building for whoever in the world can afford the price tag. And now we see the outcome. Walk through parts of this borough and look up at the new builds from the Conservatives' last term in office. You will see windows without curtains, empty balconies, whole floors shrouded in darkness, homes priced beyond local wages, homes marketed far beyond local postcodes. While families here wait for secure housing, those buildings stand in silence. Tombstones for lack of ambition to a capital model that treated public land as a commodity and sold off the family silver for cash, not community. And that was a choice, that was their choice. They treated capital as something to manage down. We treat capital as the power to elevate. When this administration delivered its first capital strategy, we made a deliberate pivot. Nearly £275 million was directed to housing, 185 million invested in repairing and protecting council homes that had too long been neglected. This was a clear change in direction away from disposal and towards stewardship. Since then, we have built a record of steady, deliberate ambition, expanding genuinely affordable housing, investing in infrastructure, retaining public assets and making them work harder for the borough. That direction continues in the programme before us tonight. This report commits us to sustained investment in council homes and genuinely affordable housing, to estate safety and infrastructure, and to assets designed to generate long-term income rather than one-off receipts. And look around us. We are sitting in the new civic campus, not yet fully open, but already a statement of intent, a consolidated civic hub that lowers costs for the council and generates income for the borough. A development that includes council homes and genuinely affordable homes, a town square, a cinema, a concert hall, and a gallery. This is not extravagance. It is civic pride made concrete. Low ambition applies sticking plasters. Low ambition settles for temporary fixes. Low ambition builds short-term answers to long-term problems. And eventually, low ambition manages decline. The right ambition builds. It builds homes that are lived in and neighbourhoods that feel secure. It builds infrastructure that endures and public spaces that reflect confidence, not retreat. Ambition is about shaping what stands here long after we are gone, in bricks, in stone, and in the lives lived here. And there is so much more to build. We do not shrink from challenges. In May, the people of this borough will decide whether we go back to managed decline with these Conservatives or keep building with Labour. And I commend this report. Thank you.
Councillor Lang.
Madam Mayor, it's an honour to speak here tonight in this inspiring council chamber, if a little chilly, for the first time as a councillor, maybe the last. And can I say Slava Ukraini? I'm wearing a badge that a young Ukrainian girl and her mother gave me when I got talking to them on a bus in Hammersmith and Fulham at the start of the conflict. I said I would wear it until the war ends. Mayor, I must confess that lately I've grown fond of listening to country music, especially at a superb chandeliered cultural venue on the Uxbridge Road Bush Hall. I'm told country music is the fastest growing musical genre in the UK. Maybe it's something to do with the ageing process, or that I like music that tells a story. £452.2 million investment in our Hammersmith and Fulham capital programme and strategy over the next 4 years in uncertain geopolitical times, well, that's a story. 4.8 million set aside for the school's renewal programme, investments in our housing stock, 298 new buildings, 218 of them affordable, the completion of our new civic campus, part of our exciting cultural corridor, £4.5 million on CCTV, providing significant investment to the Uxbridge Road, and continuing to rise to the challenge of climate and ecological emergencies. A Labour Council further creating the conditions and culture to develop a borough of innovation and economic growth for residents, young people and their families. Some of us sometimes need help and guidance with complex budget figures and the fine details of the capital programme. Yet we all know that every pound, every penny counts. And I must again pay tribute to Councillor Rowan Ree and Council Finance officers for their tremendous work here and indeed their vision. For although perhaps on paper or a spreadsheet these figures can seem a little dry, when you relate them to our residents, and especially young people and their families, and their needs, their hopes, their aspirations, they come alive. Maybe not quite rock and roll. Of course, you can see that tonight at another Hammersmith and Fulham iconic music landmark, the Shepherd's Bush Empire, where the Foo Fighters have chosen to play tonight their only London concert. Madam Mayor, I want to try and put some of this in context. Compare all of what Hammersmith and Fulham Labour have done and intends to do, to keep on doing, well, with Reform UK. What are they saying or proposing or not for young people and their families? And what about the Tories? What hope do they offer young people and their families in Hammersmith and Fulham? Let's never forget the Financial Times word of the year in 2022, Trussonomics, and its dire consequences. And at another Hammersmith and Fulham cultural venue, the Hammersmith Apollo, in 2023, a young British band, the Ezra Collective, stepped up onto that famous stage to receive their well-deserved Mercury Prize award. The first people they thanked were their youth workers and their teachers, and they praised the help that youth clubs and centres had given them and warned that many such centres around the country had closed and were closing. A few months later, in White City, a new state-of-the-art youth centre, West Youth Zone, opened. A unique collaboration venture with Hammersmith and Fulham Labour Council, education and youth charities, and local and regional and national businesses. A Labour Council working with residents to improve the public realm, to make it a better place to live, to grow up in, to work, to shop, to eat, to relax and enjoy local arts and facilities. Finally, at the end of the superb Lyric Theatre's Christmas panto, Jack and the Beanstalk, a theatre, by the way, saved with £5 million from Labour's Hammersmith and Fulham Council, and a theatre we all know that does so much work in our community, I was proud, along with the rest of the largely young audience, to join in the refrain, Glory, Glory, Hammersmith. So, Madam Mayor, I fully support this programme and strategy where we, as a Hammersmith and Fulham Labour Council, are proudly working to create a stronger, safer, kinder borough full of hope and optimism.
Thank you very much. Councillor Nimmo.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Hopefully I can keep this in time. This administration, led by Hammersmith and Fulham Labour, is delivering one of the most ambitious capital programmes our borough has seen for a generation. Through the 4-year capital programme, the London Borough of Hammersmith and Fulham is investing over 450 million in our communities, and at the heart of that investment is housing and young people. Housing is not a commodity for overseas speculators, as those opposite us believe. It's a right for local people. And in an age when too many young families are priced out of this borough, we are choosing to build homes that are genuinely affordable. Hundreds of new homes in this programme and thousands more energy efficient homes, either delivered or underway. It's not an accident of the market, it's a decision of a social democratic Hammersmith and Fulham Labour administration. Across the borough, from Lily Road to the Civic Campus where we are tonight, Hammersmith and Fulham Labour's housing programme is delivering thousands of new homes, with a clear majority designated as genuinely affordable and rooted in community need, not speculator gain. And what of our young people? Society that neglects young people mortgages its future. We're investing in schools, in special educational needs, and in keeping support close to home, because talent is universal, even if opportunity is not. And as Councillor Cowan spoke about earlier, our pathway bond adds to that and achieves those goals as well. Now, I gently say to colleagues opposite, well, you may prefer the invisible hand, we prefer a helping hand. And when times are tough, that makes all the difference. And earlier in this meeting, I was delighted to vote for another fully balanced budget here in Hammersmith and Fulham, one that ensures we provide the same level of exceptional services that you simply wouldn't get if you lived anywhere else. And on that note, I've been reading with interest some of the local Tories' campaign literature and the duplicitous pledges that they have been making to local people, particularly the cost of them. A temporary bridge over the River Thames, put up in just a few months. Military-style efficiency. That sounds great, doesn't it? Why hasn't anyone thought of that before? Only, like most of the Conservatives' proposals, it is entirely unoriginal. It's a really old idea, and indeed, it's ill thought through. Please tell us what the residents of what the residents on either side of such a temporary bridge would make of it. The residents who live in Digby Mansions in my ward, and indeed those in the mansion blocks in Barnes who would be affected. What about St Paul's School, who you've taken the liberty of saying their playing fields are up for grabs? Now, I know some of your comrades in the Tory party are alumni, but it seems, if you'll forgive me, a bridge too far that you can requisition their land. And indeed, what about the judicial reviews that will certainly happen thereafter? But most importantly, what about the cost? Both sides of this chamber know that local government finances are stretched. And indeed, the Capital Report outlines the tens of millions of pounds the council has already spent on the bridge. The Conservative solution will be in the region of a mere £20 million, the Evening Standard claims. And not even factoring in other spending commitments they've made in their leaflets, which they haven't even explained how they'll be paid for. So let me outline to the options to the Tories, in the style on this side of the chamber that we quite enjoy, a pub quiz. Options A, B, C, and D. Will they choose option A? Cuts. Perhaps the law enforcement team, as they've said they would like to do before, or is it free adult social care, a lifeline for elderly and disabled people in the borough, or is it children's services? Which one would it be? How about option B, higher taxes? This HNF Labour administration has made our borough the area with the third lowest council tax in the country. But they're waving silly placards demanding lower taxes when our council tax is already the third lowest. But who knows? The Tory party also didn't tell people they would crash the economy under Liz Truss. Then there's option C, a favourite of the local Tory party, selling off our estates. Councillor Painter before me has more eloquently described what happened before, but would the local Tories be so low as to stoop to sell off people's homes to pay for a temporary bridge? Or even option D, all of the above? Madam Mayor, the local Tories are desperate. With Reform UK coming for their votes, they're desperately announcing policy that is ill thought through, unfunded, and showing they're not serious about governing. And in 71 days' time, the voters of Hammersmith and Fulham will see right through it. Thank you very much.
Are there any other speakers? Okay. Right. I put the report and, sorry, carry on. I missed you.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'm proud to move this capital strategy and four-year capital programme. This report commits £452 million to building a better borough here in Hammersmith and Fulham. It covers our parks, our schools, place shaping and regeneration. In her speech, Councillor Painter was absolutely right to point out the importance of a good home for security. And like her, I hope that we have a future Prime Minister coming from the Clem Attlee estate. Councillor Ume is also absolutely right to highlight the major safety improvements that she has been overseeing in the housing department, making sure that people are safe in their homes. She also was good to point out the outdated figures and outdated assessments that were being quoted by the Leader of the Opposition. She spoke about the praise from the Ombudsman and our external auditor. Indeed, our Grant Thornton external audit partner said that the department's turnaround from the state that they left us in, was the best recovery I have ever seen. That's not our words, that's our independent external auditor. Now, Councillor Downer-Sanderson, I understand he's new, but perhaps you need a little bit more time going over these reports to get used to them. He talked about leaseholder costs. Well, our policy on leaseholder charging is exactly the same as theirs was, so that leaseholders are charged for the services that they receive. He says we haven't held a leaseholder forum for some time. There was one yesterday. How recently would you like us to hold these? We're not tripling leaseholder fees, as he suggests. We're building more houses, so there are more leaseholders, and the leaseholders are paying money into the HRA. This is all just basic maths. Now, he also spoke about the civic campus. Now, he says that the previous scheme, the Conservative scheme, would cost £22 million. Now, where on earth has he got that figure from? Where on earth is that from? It's not nearly accurate. The actual project would have cost closer to £300 million, far more than the project that we are in this evening. Not only that, but this civic campus, that's our plan, generates revenue for the council and will pay for itself in the medium term. Perhaps he thinks that we should hand this revenue back. This will regenerate King Street, as the leader says, bringing businesses from Chiswick High Road into King Street. Perhaps he would rather tell those businesses to stay away. It will provide over 100 genuinely affordable homes. Perhaps he thinks that providing these homes is too big a risk. Now, he and the Leader of the Opposition talk about ballooning costs. Now, they don't mention any actual numbers because they're not particularly interested, hardly the forensic examination that we heard about earlier. Now, his predecessor and Councillor Alford actually came to a briefing on the civic campus at Cabinet. He hasn't done that, perhaps because he isn't interested in the issues facing the council and doesn't want to grapple with the realities. Not one person in the opposition mentioned the COVID pandemic and the lockdown and the Health and Safety Executive investigation. Obviously things that will delay a programme. Not one of them mentioned the war in Ukraine and Brexit, which obviously will have an impact on the cost of raw materials. It's only through the excellent financial management of this project that it has stayed so well in its budget. Now, Hammersmith Bridge, we used to have a consensus on Hammersmith Bridge in this chamber, that the safety of the public came first, and Hammersmith and Fulham residents shouldn't be expected to pick up the tab. Now, it's interesting that this has since been abandoned by the opposition at the earliest possible opportunity in favour of rank political opportunism. Councillor Nimmo is absolutely right to point out the ludicrousness of their plan for a military-style Bailey Bridge across the river. Now, I can just see Private Pike and his band of toy soldiers fitting this together across the River Thames. The idea that you could compulsory purchase part of St Paul's School and Digby Mansions and build a bridge for £20 million is ludicrous. It shows a complete lack of attention to detail and a lack of grip on reality. Now, Councillor Davey and Councillor Lang mentioned the importance of capital programmes to people's lives. These are not just numbers in a spreadsheet. They're the parks where children play. They're the homes that residents raise their families in. They're the schools where future generations develop. This is a capital budget that builds a better future for all our residents, and I
Thank you
commend it to
very
the
much.
council.
I put the report and its recommendations to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Got it? Lovely. All those against? Anyone not voting? Thank you. The report and its recommendations are carried. Thank you very much indeed. Moving now on to item 6.3, Treasury Management Strategy Statement 2026-27. I call on Councillor Reid to move the report and recommendations.
Formally moved.
I've been informed Councillor Reid and Councillor Pascal Talbert would like to speak. Would you like to wait till after? Councillor Talbert.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. This is an absolute curious delight to do. I'm very glad that finally we get the chance to discuss Treasury management. Had a bit of a bet going on about which will happen first. We get to do this or we get to be in the town hall, so it's marvellous to see them happening simultaneously. Thank you for the very factual, very good paper. It is obviously right that we are always on the lookout for more cost-effective borrowing. There are obviously strict national level guardrails, largely set in primary legislation about what borrowing can be used for. This is really sensible stuff. It learns from costly errors made by councils in the past. In the interest of fairness, these errors have been made by councils across the country of many different political persuasions. And this process largely reflects the risk that councillors, who are often politically motivated, come up with wheezes which sound good in an echo chamber, but crumple upon contact with real life. Councillor Carmel and others here will have memories of Labour in Hammersmith and Fulham having made exactly those sort of mistakes in the 80s. But of course, we recognise that it is a slightly politically cheap point to constantly hark back decisions made under previous management. I note the PWLB guidance strongly arguing against councils doing speculative investment. And on our side, we've constantly urged caution about getting into the investment pool when the lifeguard isn't watching. There is always a risk to being too entrepreneurial when municipal. Particular attention needs to be paid to the income implications that stem from London commercial property values, which have faced significant prolonged decline since 2022, largely due to a combination of high interest rates, hybrid working, leading to revenues decreasing by about 22% since June 2022. In an H&F perspective, this may well have significant implications for the ratio of capital financing costs to net revenue stream. Councillor Downer Sanderson has spoken at some length about the risks involved in being too commercially speculative. I endorse those comments. Page 195 of the report shows that we'll need to be taking on more debt over the coming years. Within that context, it is absolutely good to have those centrally set guardrails. And paragraph 58 notes that any slippage against the capital programme or new capital approvals will impact the figures reported throughout. This is notable, and given the council's track record, again, something we have debated, does give some cause to pause. The paradox of Treasury is that it's slightly an ill wind that blows some good. Higher inflation gives you that bit more cash, and this year, higher than expected inflation has given us an extra 2.6 million to plug gaps. I'd caution against being too dependent on this. It's rather like going on a big night out, looking at your smartwatch the next day and thinking you've done some really good exercise. We are, as the report's economic update suggests, in difficult economic times. Even the biggest cheerleader on the benches opposite would find it difficult to admit that we've had the growth in the economy that we would have wanted. Previous governments made the political choice to solve an employment problem at the cost of productivity. Now both are weak, and this is a bit worrying because an economy being choked back is in nobody's wider interests. And on this side, we'd rather have a stronger economy and healthier council finances, regardless of the administration. Madam Mayor, in this paper, we are asked to note that the engine is running smoothly. This is within strictly set parameters and managed at largely official level. We are delighted to note that that is indeed the case. On issues we've previously debated tonight, continuing the automotive metaphor, we're talking about the direction of travel, not the operation of the engine. And I think that's where we have the political differences, which again we've debated. I pay thanks to the officers concerned for putting this paper together, not pulling their punches on the profound macroeconomic issues this country continues to face. So we note the report with pleasure, and with the caveat that we should not ascribe to political genius what is a core and important function of local administration. Thank you once again.
Thank you. Councillor Ree.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Now, everyone will be very pleased to hear I'm going to keep this brief. I'm sure everyone's heard enough from me this evening. As Councillor Pascal Toubre says, I absolutely welcome the chance to discuss this here in the chamber, and I welcome the serious tone with which he debated the issue. Perhaps we can discuss it on one of those big nights out that he talked about in the future. Yes, he's right to look at potential growing debt in the future. We are at a time of falling rates, although this is something that is always monitored, and the capital programme and indeed the Treasury management strategy are always under review. He was also absolutely right to mention the strict guardrails that we have in place and, of course, the importance of prudence. Now, I did want to turn to Councillor Carmel's speech earlier. As the leader says, I want to thank him for his contributions and wish him all the best after the election. I did just want to clear up perhaps the misunderstanding between allocation and completed spend. So, as I said at the previous meeting last month, we don't plan to have any unallocated funding as a result of the Hammersmith and Fulham green investment, and indeed of the money raised so far, we have nothing that is unallocated. So from the first tranche, we raised £1 million. Part of that money has gone to a Greater Green project in Eelbrook Common, part of the Brook Green Soakway, to SUDS and greening initiatives in Westfield Road, Blythe Road, Edith Road, and a community garden in Frank Banfield Park, to name but a few. The second tranche raised over £750,000. Some of the projects that this has been allocated to include South Africa Road School Garden, Soakways in Ravenscourt Park, and Askew Road Tree Pits. The third tranche, again of £750,000, has gone towards projects including rain gardens and greening in College Park and Old Oak. 15 new cycle hangers, 5 new cargo bike docking bays, the Nourish Hub Garden, and investment in Broomhouse Lane and Hurlingham Road. Tranche 4, the last completed tranche, also raised £750,000. That money has been allocated to projects including the Hammersmith Grove SUDS programme, the Parks Improvements programme, and the Sands End Intergenerational Garden. The fifth tranche is currently live. We're expecting to raise £1 million as a result of this. And once that's done, the money will be allocated to appropriate projects, which will all be published in the usual way. So thank you very much, Madam Mayor, for the opportunity to talk on the Treasury Management Strategy, one of the most important, if least leafed through documents that the Council publishes. And I commend it to the Council. Thank you very much.
Is the report and its recommendations agreed? The recommendations are carried. Item 6.4, pay policy statement. I call on Councillor Reid to move the report and recommendations.
Formally moved.
Does anyone wish to speak on this item? No? Is the report and its recommendations agreed? Okay. The recommendations are carried. Item 6.5, review of the Constitution. Is the report noted? Item 6.6, joint venture with a local authority-owned trading organisation to deliver managed service temporary and interim staffing services. This report includes exempt appendices that have been circulated to members only. Any discussion of the appendices will require passing the motion in the agenda to exclude the public and press. I call on Councillor Reid to move the report and recommendations.
Formally moved.
I've been informed Councillor Rowan Reid would like to speak.
No, that's quite all right. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Are there any other speakers? No. Okay. Is the report and its recommendations agreed? The recommendations are carried. Can you believe this? I'm closing the meeting early. Thank you very much for attending, everybody. We got through it.